Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers to save his mother. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 81, Falling Inside the Black. Squad 15/Urahara Shoten, Captain's Meeting. All evidence indicates that something is very wrong with Hell. Ishin finished, telling most of his colleagues about the encounter with a sinner, or Tagabito. The only captain not in attendance was Jin Ikamaru, because they still didn't set up the video communication system in Hueco Mundo. The soul was formerly the Hollow Shrieker, who was a serial killer in life. Unfortunately, we were unable to capture him for questioning before he was returned to Hell. This is indeed grave news, Yamamoto said, sounding quite tired with each disaster that has appeared during the year. And the first time that a Tagabito managed to escape his bonds and make his way to the world of the living. He gave a pause to think about the next course of action the Gotei should take while the rest of the captains continued to talk. Shrieker was a weak hollow on his own, but clever with his abilities and minions, Urahara said, having more info on the being in question since Ichigo and the others did talk to him about any of their fights with any hollows before heading for Soul Society. From the sounds of it, he may have gained an 80% increase in power, from a rough estimate guess, on top of an enhancement of his base abilities. Whoever is really pulling these strings is dangerous. You suspect that there are more? Yukitake asked, hoping that the worst was less severe than it likely would be. I said Shrieker was clever with his own powers. I never said he was smart enough to get out of Hell on his own. Kisuke returned immediately. I volunteer to go to the world of the living to lead an investigation into what's going on. The offer brought Yamamoto back from his thoughts as he registered what Kisuke said. Should the need arise, you will be given the means to safely infiltrate Hell and return, he said, giving his blessing on the plan. And above all else, Ichigo is to be kept in the dark about this. Everyone looked to the commander, teetering between surprised and understanding. That fool disciple of mine would insist on shouldering the mission by himself, and I think we can all agree that he deserves a break. All the captains in attendance nodded in agreement, that they shouldn't rely on Ichigo to handle all their problems. Unfortunately, despite my better judgment, this means that the live exercise will have to continue. What? Ishin shouted in anger. No. It has to be cancelled. It can't happen, and I need to step up patrols to dash. He would have continued if Genryusai didn't slam his cane down. They have to continue because if we don't, Ichigo is sure to find out that something is wrong. The dragon began to explain. I already sent the order for him to gather hollows to use in the exercise, and if he cares about his sisters as much as we know he does, then he'd be there watching over them. The best thing we can do now is increase the security. Captain Soifan, I want you to join Urahara and ready for anything. Understood, the two captains said with a nod. Dismissed. And pray that this is nothing, Yamamoto said as the monitor died out, leaving Ishin alone in the room. It's never nothing, he said regretfully as he prepared for tomorrow. With Ichigo, Hueco Mundo. And there, the king said, finishing a note that told his concubines to try to strengthen themselves. Loli and Minoli were currently still asleep, clinging to each other for comfort after Ichigo left the bed. He stretched himself as he made his way out of the royal bedchambers and out to the commons area of Las Noches. He appeared at the edge of where Jin was, with a set of 10 cages no bigger than a building and holding the chosen cannon fodder. Is this all of them? He asked as reached Jin's side. Yes, I thought 10 would be enough for the students, the silver-haired man said as they examined the various hollows, all of which were slamming against the cages and trying to escape. I'm actually concerned that they might be too weak. Then again, I may not be the best comparison to academy students. This is for real combat experience and practice, not pitting them against aminos, Ichigo said as Grinjao and Ulquiorra appeared. Hey, you two. How did it go? Ulquiorra bowed respectfully while Grimjow scoffed. Bastards went into hiding in the Minos forest during your attack on Las Noches. The panther growled, annoyed at the cowardice of many of his kind. They're too scared to even try to join and risk displeasing you. Like you'd turn them into a hollow smoothie or something. And my vasto lord brothers had long since scattered to the distant corners of Hueco Mundo. Ulquiorra said, having gone to search for his family born from the darkness. One night was not enough to search for them. Ichigo let out a sigh, expecting as much since Hueco Mundo was an endless desert. I wonder if I can get Squad 12 to make a massive spirit beacon above Las Noches. He wondered, thinking it would make attracting Arrancar potentials so much easier. Well, might as well get these guys to the practice site. Ichigo then flicked his wrist, creating a garganta, while Grimjow and Ulquiorra wordlessly began to carry the cages with them. Wait, you're coming with me? He asked, surprised by the two. More for your sisters. Ulquiorra answered as they continued, dragging the cages along with heavy chains. I shudder to think of what would happen if they were hurt and you acted. You don't use a Gran Rey Zero to destroy an ant, Grimjow chimed in, why should you fight these runts? The trio entered the world of the living, quickly sensing where the training exercise was being held. They soon flashed to the site, outside of the city limits, just as the instructor had finished telling the students what to expect. Yuzu and Karen standing with Ishin, Kisuk, Soifan and most of the officers of Squad 15, pouting but paying very close attention. Recently, however, the captain, commander and headmaster of Shin'o Academy decided to up the difficulty of this course. Instead of dummy hollows, you will fighting the real things. Grimjow and Ulquiorra chose that moment to toss the cages toward the students and shoot several ballists to free the hollows. The air was filled with the cries of hungry hollows as the instructor and class turned to the beasts. Good luck, he said, prompting the braver students to charge forward. Everyone watched in mild interest as the students fought the hollows, half of which were soon exorcised while the other half were proving more durable. I can't even remember when I had trouble with those hollows, let alone when Yuzu did. Ichigo thought as he remembered how far he came from that timid child he was. He was brought out of his thoughts by a sudden gust of wind, acting like a pulse that echoed throughout the area. The hybrid looked to where the wind came from along with Ulquiorra. A quick glance conveyed the message between the two with Yuria and Soifan coming up to join them. They turned to Grimjow who gave a dismissive wave of his hand, all but saying that he'd keep an eye on the twins. With that, the group departed to search for any clues. Karakura town, hours later. The day is almost over and we still haven't found anything. Ichigo thought to himself, still remaining cautious as experience made him wiser. Something is out there, but where? It wasn't too long before Yuryu appeared at his side. Any luck, Yuria? He asked as his cousin gave him a stern look. Ichigo, return to Soul Society. He ordered, exercising what authority he had over Ichigo since he was now a lieutenant while Ichigo was the fourth seat of Squad 1. Yamamoto contacted us recently, ordering your return. Ulquiorra soon joined them as Ichigo checked his phone, finding that Yamamoto was indeed demanding his return. All of which was setting off alarms in Ichigo's head because never once was he summoned so urgently. Yuryu, what's happening? The hybrid demanded, not even looking at Yuryu or Ulquiorra. The latter of whom had his attention elsewhere. Something like this has never happened before. What did I miss? He demanded, now glaring at the Quincy. What is going on? Ichigo growled, seeing the strain of keeping secrets in Yuryu's eyes. Kurosaki, you will follow the head captain's orders. Soifan sternly said while Yuria tried the calmer method. Ichigo he started, before Ulquiorra interrupted. Attackers incoming, he said ever so stoically. The trio turned to see three black-cloaked figures with masks flying toward them. One was so rotund it was like a ball with hands and feet, another was a giant of a man with thick hulking arms, the last seemed like a normal figure. That one dashed ahead of the other figures and when he got close, four tendrils burst from his back and consumed the Quincy. Before Ichigo could react, Ulquiorra cut the tendrils off of the figure and kicked him away. The other two, larger guys, were closing in as Ulquiorra shot them point blank with a Zero. The pair were pushed back a good 20 meters before the round guy absorbed the energy.
Minty.
The figure said with a slimy hiss to his voice.
You missed the target.
He turned to the figure that had the tendrils, now holding a tiny Yuri doll.
You only had the one shot.
Then we'll move to plan B, as intended. The man holding the doll said as he punched the Yuri doll, knocking Yuri's own head back.
Personally, I want my revenge.
He began crushing the doll, earning pained screams out of the Quincy and prompting Ichigo to act, only to get intercepted by the giant figure.
Ulquiorra kicked the giant aside while the fat one shot a barrage of pink energy bullets, prompting the duo to dodge.
These guys are the source of the disturbance,
Ulquiorra said to Ichigo, as they weaved around the onslaught. But apparently, there's another group that's attacking the training site.
The hybrid's eyes widened as he understood what that meant.
Go. We've got this, he said, unsheathing his sword going on the offensive.
Ichigo disappeared in a flash with Soifan chasing him while Ulquiorra used his Sonito to get in front of the one crushing Yuryu.
Hello, Sailaporo. The returned Arrancar stopped in shock at Ulquiorra's sudden appearance and recognition of a former ally.
Before he could do anything else, a beam of light sliced through his hands and made him drop the doll. As it fell, Yuri shot out and recovered his voodoo self while the other two tried to follow Ichigo before Ulquiorra blocked their path.
Enclose, Murcielago, he said, transforming into his Resurrection. You annoying little ants. The fat guy growled as light exploded behind them, revealing Yuryu in his Volstandig. Go ahead, that won't help,
he said, giggling with confidence while Sailaporo was shaking in fear.
No, not again.
He screamed in a panic, remembering every feather that tore him to shreds.
No. He turned and ran for his life, heading straight for Ulquiorra. Aim for the mask,
Yuri called out as he gathered more Racier for his wings.
Ulquiorra immediately shot a bala directly to Sail's mask, revealing the terrified Arrancar. No. No, no. No. No, please. He begged as chains wrapped around him as the gates of hell appeared, sucking the former Espada back into its grasp. No. He cried as he was stabbed with a giant blade and disintegrated while the gates faded just as quickly as they appeared. Fascinating, Ulquiorra said as the sight ended, turning back to their opponents. So, just destroy the mask and they go to hell? He held up a finger as he charged a Ciro. Seems simple enough. The second he was about to fire the Ciro, the fat guy got in front of the blast. Remembering how this guy absorbed his Ciro once already, he quickly flashed between him and the larger guy, blasting him in the face. You bastard! The fat guy howled, intending to pound Ulquiorra's skull in when he saw Racier feathers coming at him. The first round he quickly absorbed despite the massive barrage. As much as I enjoy your Racier dash, he said as Yuri sent another volley, this time spinning around him like a ball. This isn't going to work. He laughed mockingly, soon absorbing all of the Racier into himself. You really aren't that bright, are you? You've seen me absorb Racier attacks with ease and you just keep throwing them at me like a crazy person, he said, all while his cloak was falling apart to reveal a horrendously obese man with armor covering his upper body. Wait. What? The sinner screamed in terror as his protection from hell fell away. He desperately tried to cover himself with anything he could, but hell had found him. You shouldn't have sent your friend from the other day, Yuri said, adjusting his glasses. Fighting him gave us the important detail of your clothes protecting you from the damnation you flee from. Chains quickly wrapped around the fat man, dragging him back to perdition despite his best efforts. And I'd rather not have to deal with you again, so just to be sure. The Quincy spoke as thousands of small scratches erupted from the blob's body with Racier pouring out from each. I'll be taking all of your Racier, he said calmly as the Tagabito's body slowly withered away to a shriveled husk, screaming in terror the whole way until he made contact with the giant blade. Seems he has gotten stronger, Ulquiorra thought, watching the Quincy finish his fight. Ichigo and Grinjao seems to be handling that situation back there. His thoughts were interrupted by the hulking brute punching down at him. The result created a heavy shockwave that forced Ulquiorra to use both hands to block the attack. But I shouldn't keep my lord waiting. I am the right hand of the King of Hollows.
The Arrancar said, pushing the brute back with a flap of his wings.
I can't bother myself with trash like you for much longer. You trash!
The figure spoke in a broken way with a throaty growl.
I'll crush you!
He flashed in front of the bat, fully intent on using his massive strength to pound him into the ground. Ulquiorra, taking full advantage of his small size and great speed, slipped inside of the behemoth's guard as he punched the ground. Jumping to avoid the earthquake shock, he flattened his hand and speared it through the monster's chest.
Ulquiorra frowned when the Tagabito clenched up and kept his arm stuck inside the guy. Now you die.
The Tagabito yelled in victory, wrapping his arms and crushing Ulquiorra.
I will not die.
The bat said, tearing his arm free while losing a majority of it inside the sinner's chest, pointing the bleeding and healing stump directly in from of the mask.
I will not fail my king. Ciro, he said while charging the blast in his restored palm.
The sinner barely had the chance to flee before his head was destroyed, along with his entire body. The only sinner to be blasted back to hell and silent while it happened.
Fully healed, Ulquiorra turned to Yuryu. You need to explain a few things. Back with Ichigo.
The hybrid returned to the training grounds with all haste, finding 4 more cloaked figures fighting his father and Grimjow, with the everyone else being located behind Oraheim's barriers as Kasuk was gathering data. In his own resurrection, the Panther was able to hold off the 2 he was fighting, a figure with a long mask while the other wielded a large, black, 3-pronged glaive. Ishin was in his shurikai, fending off another fire user and a figure with tentacles. Before he charged forward, Soifan soon appeared by Ichigo's side. Before you go, here's what you need to know, she said, knowing that getting Ichigo to leave was impossible now. They are denizens from hell and their clothes are the only thing keeping them here. Ichigo merely nodded in understanding before dashing forward. As he was, Grimjaw was caught in a deadlock with the glaive user while the taller figure was closing in behind him and ready to cut the Panther down before he could overpower his opponent. Wordlessly, Ichigo shot 2 bala at the sinners, forcing them to dodge with the glaive user having to let go of his weapon. He tried to grab onto the cord that was attached to it, but Grimjow already had it in his grasp, slamming the blade into the taller figure's head and shattering a glass tank to reveal the 2 skulls of Aranero, and thrusting the handle into the stomach of the other. Now with only one opponent, Grimjow bore a savage grin as he grabbed the figure by the throat and began mercilessly beating him. It was probably more fair when he was outnumbered. Ichigo thought as he continued toward his father, not even sparing a glance as the gates of hell opened to pull the 2 skulls back into its depths and not noticing the figure that came out of them. Ichigo flew toward his father, grabbing the pyromancer by the face and throwing him into the ground to gain some distance away from the 2.
Damn it!
The figure growled as he charged at Ichigo with jets of flames pouring from his hands.
Ichigo unsheathed Kyoka Suigetsu and blocked the attacks. If we can't get your sisters, I'll just drag you to hell with me, he roared, opening a hole behind Ichigo and desperately charging forward. The tentacle figure witnessed this and went to assist his ally, only to get intercepted by a figure in white with a black sword. Who are you? He demanded while Ishin threw a Getsuga Tensho at him. He barely dodged while Ichigo avoided his own adversary, letting him dive back into hell. A portal of flames appeared next to the tentacled man with the same pyromancer inside. Gunjo, we're leaving to regroup, the man said quickly, making the now named Gunjo hesitate before following his master.
Ichigo blared at the portal of hell when the white man came to his side. As much as I like seeing those people not get their way, I felt a little useless, he said, moving his black headcloth to reveal more of his face. But this won't be the last you'll see of Dash. He was cut off when Ichigo slammed the hilt of Kyoka Suigetsu into his chest.
The sudden strike knocked the air out of him and left his ears ringing, seeing the Zanpakuto pulsate before everything went dark. Squad 15 Barracks.
The squad put the man in white and the man with the glaive in a pair of holding cells, specifically one that could cancel out the pull of hell, with Urahara and Soifan ready to interrogate them. Ishin was getting ready to send the class, and his daughters, back to Soul Society for their own safety since the figures explicitly targeted them. Ichigo, meanwhile, was having a disagreement with Yamamoto.
Something is going on that suggests that something is extremely wrong in hell, the harshest place anyone can go to, with people that were targeting my sisters, and you want me to return to Soul Society?
He asked, not happy about being sidelined after everything else he managed to accomplish.
Arrogance is the ultimate failing of any warrior, Ichigo.
The dragon returned to his student. I believed you would have learned that when you struck down Aizen. You have enough burdens on your shoulders for now, my student,
he said, adopting a gentler tone.
For now, let's return our focus on your lessons. The situation in hell will be handled, you have my word.
I expect you back soon.
The feed cut off, leaving Ichigo with his thoughts in Grimmjow.
So, does this mean you want us to return to Hueco Mundo?
The panther asked, not seeing much point in hanging around if the situation was already handled.
You might as well.
Ichigo conceded, ready to open a Garganta to Soul Society, when glittering dust flowed into the room and descended upon the pair. Soon their minds were filled with Ulquiorra's memories of the interrogation Kisuke and Soifon held with the pair. The man wearing white was called Kakuto and was open with everything while the other man refused to talk, aside from demanding Kakuto's silence. He explained that the cloaked figures were a radical and desperate group that found a way to sneak out of hell and planned to use Ichigo to destroy the gates of hell and, most importantly, that they would never stop.
We really need to get Yuzu and Karen able to protect themselves.
Ichigo groaned, getting annoyed at how everyone seemed to target them to get to him.
So what's the plan? Grimmjow asked, sensing his king's agitation.
Ignore it or do something stupid. Ichigo thought about it, pacing about the room. On one hand, he's driven by the need to protect his sisters and stopping a new threat from destroying the world, again. On the another, there were other entirely capable Soul Reapers that could take care of the issue instead of him. Instead of answering, Ichigo flashed out of the building and started walking in the hope that it might clear his head.
He didn't even take 10 steps before he was surrounded by Onmitsukido members in hiding. What do I do?
He wondered as he made his walk, loosening his limiters and increasing his power. I've never really tested how strong I became, and hell seems like a perfect place to cut loose, but I wouldn't be denied going there without good reason. He then thought about that Kakuto fellow that explained the aim of using him as a way of opening a way to get out of hell. He took a deep breath and made his decision, one he was sure he'd be regretting later on. The stealth force, the entire city, had only a second to notice the falling purple cherry blossoms before blacking out, and Ichigo flashed back to the barracks.
Holding cells. Kakuto was lounging in his prison cell, internally debating how it ranked against hell itself, when he noticed Soul Reapers dropping like flies.
The man known as Kisuke had only a moment to groan out Ichigo's name before collapsing. Kakuto himself barely had a few seconds to think before Ichigo appeared before him and opening the cell.
I'd say thanks, but I doubt this was out of your generosity,
Kakuto said, slowly getting up before Ichigo grabbed his collar and yanked him out before slamming him against the wall.
Do you know where those radicals went? Ichigo demanded, glaring at Kakuto in his unhidden eye.
The sinner himself raised his hands in a placating gesture, hoping to calm the hybrid down.
Easy there, he said, Ichigo not letting up even a little. Yes, I know where in hell they went. If you really want, I can guide you there myself.
I told your friends that I'm not keen on letting those cloaked bastards get their way either. Ichigo finally let go, but continued to glare at the man.
You're a sinner condemned to hell. Why are you choosing to help us?
The hybrid asked, still maintaining his caution.
It's more that you're helping me, the prisoner returned.
Honestly, I hate those cloaked idiots and really want to see them beaten.
The only solace we know is the pain and death of other sinners. No one is sent to hell without deserving it. What did you do?
I admit that I did some pretty nasty things, enough to damn me to hell, but in order to protect what's important you'll need to stain your soul.
Ichigo thought back to a similar lesson Yamamoto tried to teach him when he asked about hell. Like I said, I'll show you the way to them, but be warned.
Hell's very air is toxic and will decay your very soul, to say nothing of the Kushinada that will hunt you down and attempt to trap you there as well.
I'm not afraid,
Ichigo said, tearing open the other cell and grabbing the cloaked figure by the face.
Now come on.
The sounds of cracking and shattering soon rang as the mask broke in Ichigo's grasp. The next instant, Ichigo grabbed onto one of Kakuto's chains as the gates of hell appeared and began to suck the glaive Togabito back to his damnation, with him screaming in terror.
Are you insane? Kakuto cried out as they were being sucked in with the sinner.
As they neared the blade of the Kusinada, Ichigo pulled himself onto the chest of his victim before kicking off of him, landing on the spine of the blade, and dashing the rest of the way into perdition. Ichigo sped past the massive muscled, skeletal beings and toward a landscape of white blocks with a pathway of blue.
I could have opened a much safer pathway, you know. Yeah, we're here, aren't we?
Ichigo said, brushing off his companion's protests and ignoring the voices in his mind.
Liar. Murderer. Do not trust. Sinner.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Damage assessment.
Another 32 have broken bones from the sudden falls, and finally Ichigo ran off with the sinners and is now in hell.
Urahara reports to the stone-faced Yamamoto, whose expression did not change the entire time. On one hand, it's impressive he managed a city-wide Hakufoku spell, so, kudos to him.
Genryusai stayed silent, making the scientist more and more uncomfortable.
Meanwhile, in Yamamoto's head, I'm going to kill that damn disciple of mine, was the only thought he had. Checking back with Mayuri. The deranged lieutenant of Squad 12 was banging his head against the desk as Urahara came in. Disappointed that the stupid experiment was the one that worked?
No, disappointed that I can't dissect the Togabito.
He groaned.
Hell will still remain near impossible to navigate and travel.
Why would anyone want to go? Urahara asked before coming to the obvious answer. You want to research hell, don't ya?
He only got a nod, prompting him to bash his head against the wall.
Chapter 82, Ichigo's Inferno. Flashback, not long after Ichigo was inducted into Squad 1. That's enough. Yamamoto declared loudly, Ichigo panting from exhaustion with almost half of Squad 1 laid beaten around him. Take them to Squad 4 for recovery. Ichigo, with me.
The remaining squad members obeyed the head captain's orders as Ichigo joined his teacher, moving to Zanjutsu practice while still weighted down with his Hakuda weights.
Yamamoto tossed him a weighted training sword and gave the next exercise. 1,000 swings of each kind. Go.
Ichigo got into the ready stance and began to swing the blade, over and over.
Hey, Yama-sensei?
Ichigo said after 10 minutes of silence, his swings never stopping.
I've been wondering something. In the time I've been a Soul Reaper, I've only seen the gates of hell once for a hollow.
I know the Zanpakuto is supposed to purify the soul of its crimes as a hollow, but how does it determine one for hell?
It doesn't. Yamamoto answered.
The Zanpakuto is the catalyst that guides lost souls, setting them on the right path or severing their bonds to the world of the living. Souls that are filled with good intentions or innocence are granted passage to soul society and eventual reincarnation, while souls filled with hate and spite are sent to hell. I thought it was the actions of the living that determined their ultimate fate in the afterlife. Ichigo said, slightly pausing in his swings before righting himself. And those actions are determined by the intent of the person doing them. The dragon returned, continuing to teach his eventual successor. Let me give you 4 people, all of whom have killed. One had slain thousands, threw away hundreds of innocent lives, all out of the desire to bring peace to his world. The second has killed many people as well with the desire of fixing a broken system, but lost his way somewhere down that road. The third has dedicated almost his entire life to the sole purpose of killing someone that is a great threat to all he cares about. The fourth has just as much blood on his hands as the first, but only does so for his own sake. Ichigo stopped swinging as he turned to his master.
Yourself, Aizen, me, and Yawatch.
Yamamoto nodded as Ichigo accurately guessed who he was referring to, waiting for Ichigo to continue on what he started. You killed many in the war with the Quincy out of the need to protect all existence from being destroyed. Aizen toyed and played with lives to gain the ability to replace the Soul King out of the belief that he could do a better job. I am training for the main purpose of killing Yawatch and prevent the destruction he'd attempt to cause.
Yawatch only cares about himself, that's the ultimate difference.
Precisely. Yamamoto said with approval, gesturing for Ichigo to continue his swings. As he did that, the ancient captain continued. Our actions define us, but our intent can reveal our true character.
Make no mistake, Ichigo, everyone in hell deserves their place there.
Hell, first level.
Every breath burns. Ichigo mentally roared as the two fell toward the platforms below.
The first level gave Ichigo the idea of what he was in for as the pair would descend into the lower levels. The air was nigh impossible to tolerate the necessary act of breathing, feeling so thin of the needed oxygen but thick with heat and decay. Even with all of his power and regenerative ability, Ichigo felt like he was suffocating, and that vulnerability reminded him too much of when Black poisoned him. In that moment Ichigo realized just how brutal hell would be, and that it would only get worse. The two landed on a single white block overlooking the level. As far as the eye could see, there were floating, angular blocks that seemed like a sick form of floating Tetris with a grid of blue intersecting paths in the middle of the massive blocks. Welcome, Ichigo, to the first level of hell,
Kakuto said, pointing off into the distance.
If we want to find our targets, we'll have to go deeper into hell.
The entrance to the next level is far in the distance,
he told the hybrid as they jumped down and descended to the blue road, Ichigo seeing hundreds of people among the blocks, all of whom seemed like they snapped a long time ago. I might as well get the Divine Comedy tour while I'm here, Ichigo called out as they landed, earning a confused look from Kakuto. I told Uncle Ryukin that reading that thing was pointless. He sighed as he pointed to the sinners among the blocks.
What can you tell me about this level?
Ah, the sinner said as he understood Ichigo once, well, if you're that curious. He began running, forcing the hybrid to follow his guide. As you can see, this is the most densely populated section of hell, filled with sinners that are trapped in despair, within sight of freedom but have given up the struggle to attain it.
What do you mean by that?
Ichigo asked, locking his eyes forward and not looking anywhere else.
I imagine there are a few who are plenty strong, but none are as strong as our jailers, the Kusanada, Kakuto answered, sparing a quick glance around to see if he could sight one that would definitely come for them. No matter how hard we train, we are unable to defeat them.
Those around us are those that gave in to the despair brought on by a pointless struggle. Minds that are broken from losing and dying countless times, having given up on their hope and their hatred. Hate is what drives those of us that continue to fight, no matter the odds. No matter how many times we are crushed, beaten, and devoured.
In hell, we are resurrected endlessly and continue to suffer. The sinner took another look around. That's odd. Where are the Kusanada? Is that the way to the next level?
Ichigo asked, pointing to an end to the road they were on, opening to empty space.
Yes. Off there is the way to the next level of hell,
he confirmed as they fearlessly jumped into the abyss and through a cloud of purple gas.
Squad 15 Infirmary.
Make sure he gets his sleep. That's what Urahara said after giving Chad a thorough examination. Oraheim managed to heal him up physically, but his spirit still needed time to recover, and he'd likely try to follow Ichigo into hell, which would be a terrible idea. Ichigo's Hakufuku wore off half an hour ago, but Chad was still asleep, leaving everyone else to go about their duties. Jackie remained by his side, making sure he got his rest.
Do whatever it takes. Here's some drugs that'll knock him out fast.
Her eyes drifted to the bottle in her pocket again, just as Chad began to stir.
Morning, big guy,
she said as Chad scanned his surroundings, slowly sitting himself up.
Though, night is probably more accurate. It's only just past midnight. How are you feeling?
Like I was blown up half a dozen times, the Fullbringer said, healed but still feeling the aches of his fights.
What did I miss?
Jackie would say she was conflicted, lying to her friend who had helped her move on from the loss of her family and accessing a new form of her Fullbring, but she was more concerned with him being in good condition.
Nothing much.
The hell thing is being handled, she said, smoothly telling the half-truth.
Kasuk said to make sure you get your rest.
She got up and moved to replace one of the drained 4 Raisher bags that held Kasuk's new restorative medicine that should help Chad recover.
Where's Ichigo?
He asked, using what skill in sensing he had to feel the leftover presence of multiple sinners and Ichigo's erasure all over the city.
Why do I feel his Ryatsu all over the city?
After that and replacing the bag, Jackie pulled out the knockout drug Kasuke made.
Chad, it's nothing for you to worry about,
she said, taking in a mouthful of the surprisingly sweet medicine. Are you Sue? She cut him off with a sudden kiss, pouring the elixir into his mouth and making him swallow on reflex.
She lingered for a few seconds, slowly tasting him through the medicine. Ichigo would want you to take it easy,
she said as she saw the drug take its effect, Chad's eyes becoming tired and unfocused.
And I'd like you to be in better shape. Please, for me?
Chad made no response as he fell back onto the bed, once again in the embrace of unconsciousness. Jackie stood up, moving her tongue around in her mouth a bit.
Spicy. Hell, second level.
The pair broke through the clouds and began to hurtle down to a vast expanse of water dotted with dozens of stone water lily structures with massive blades protruding from them. Kakuto grabbed one of his chains and lassoed Ichigo, pulling him to one of the stone lily platforms.
Nearly a minute later, they landed on the platform with Kakuto gesturing to the endless expanse around them.
And now, for our shortest stop, the second level of hell, he said, letting Ichigo take it all in as they dropped down to one of the solitary stone platforms.
Possibly the most desolate section of hell, as there is frankly nothing here. So what? A hell of isolation? Ichigo asked, curious on what suffering this level was supposed to have.
Well, that, but also this, the sinner said as he grabbed Ichigo's wrist and thrust his hand into the water. Instantly, Ichigo felt like he was drowning. That air was drained from his lungs and he couldn't get anything into his chest. After seconds that felt like hours, Kakuto released Ichigo and the hybrid still felt like he was drowning. He cast a Shikaho to create enough heat to evaporate the water on him, but it was pointless. He shook his hand enough to fling all the water off, finally regaining the ability to breathe. He gulped down mouthfuls of air, ignoring the burning of the air of hell, and was just happy to breathe again. This water takes away one's ability to breathe, leaving us with the constant sensation of drowning.
But we never die, no matter how much that would relieve us.
That. Ichigo coughs for a bit before breathing again. That really is a horrid fate.
Isolation on these rocks or constant drowning.
And we reach this after fleeing our next stop.
The third level, Kakuto said, pointing into the water.
Through there. Ichigo looked into the water, thinking of how long he'd feel that drowning sensation. Without saying anything, Ichigo released his wrist binds and unleashed half his power. He started to create a sphere of concentrated erasure above the water, cutting off his hand and throwing it into the sphere to ready a Gran Ray Zero.
Let's do this,
Ichigo roared, pulling Kakuto close to him before jumping forth and creating a erasure platform at his feet.
Gran Ray Zero,
he shouted as they were shot into the water.
Captain's meeting.
The Taigabito's plan to have Ichigo break open the gates of hell is impossible, so there was never any need to worry about that. Urahara said, giving a report on his study and predictions of the threat posed by Ichigo in hell.
The gates themselves are indestructible. The danger are the chains breaking.
He brought up a simulation with two figures, one in chains and the other with a sword. From our research, the things that keep the sinners trapped in hell are in a perpetually state of growth. Always stronger than the strongest prisoner, with every one devoured, and the chains are very much the same. The presentation had the chained figure try to break free but was unable to. Unfortunately, there's no record of anyone at Ichigo's level being down there, meaning he's stronger than the chains. The sword-wielding figure swung at the chained one and the chains broke apart. If Ichigo can be manipulated into breaking the chains, then the true threat emerges. Hell's law is absolute, and if it's broken, then the gates themselves will crack and leak out the energy of hell, which will turn the world of the living into hell as well. This is why I wanted that boy to stay out of it.
Yamamoto sighed under his breath.
While I would like to have faith in my student, this is not something I will chance.
Captains Urahara and Kuchiki, I want you both to enter hell and bring him back.
Move with all haste, every second counts. Ishin, you and Hitsugaya will set up a containment field around the gate to keep the energies at bay.
Dismissed. The commander ordered with a slam of his can, earning a nod from the captains as they went about to prepare for their latest mission. Kisuke and Byakuya left the building and were intercepted by Grimmjow and Ulquiorra, brought in for questioning on the suspicion that they helped Ichigo get into hell. "I'm coming with you," Ulquiorra said, making it clear he was not taking no for an answer. "I swore to be by his side as his vassal and I will not fail him." The captains turned to Grimmjow, who shrugged. "My king as well. That and hell sounds like a party," he said with a savage grin. Byakuya just walked by them, muttering about barbarians while Kisuke held a serious gaze at the pair. "I know what you did," he said, keeping it silent. "Ichigo told me about your Solita Vista. You also asked if I told him anything about Kakuto. I merely shared my memories. I never lie." Ulquiorra returned, not backing down from the captain. Urahara sighed in irritation. So this is what it feels like to be on the receiving end. He thought, going back to all the times he manipulated a scenario to suit his wants and needs. "Fine, you can come along. But Ichigo is going to be punished for his actions, no matter what you two try," he said, leading them down to get ready for hell. Hell, 3rd level. Almost there. Ichigo roared as his lungs burned for air until they burst through the water and into the next level of hell, the water flying off from their speed and air friction. "So what is this one?" he called, gasping for breath as he took in the view. It was a barren landscape filled with rocks and yellow pools of either lava or steaming acid. It was a toss-up of what it actually was, but Ichigo didn't think he wanted to know. Before Kakuto could answer, one of the pools exploded, prompting Ichigo to push him out of the way and onto the ground. They landed with a crash as the yellow liquid came raining down on them. Both men started to cry out in pain, Ichigo blaring at the pool while the liquid settled. "You all right?" he asked as he and Kakuto got back up, slow and labored as they worked through the punishment of hell. "I'll be fine, I'm used to it," the sinner said as he looked over to the healing Ichigo. "What about you?" "I go through that all the time, how are you faring?" Ichigo looked himself over, most of the upper half of his uniform was melted away but his wounds did heal. "I heal fast," the hybrid said, wincing as his throat and lungs started burning again with the same feeling as the yellow liquid. "Ah! What is this?" "The 3rd level of hell," Kakuto answered as he looked back to the pool that exploded. "This is where the burning air originates. The evaporation from these pools create the atmosphere of burning air that makes breathing so painful in hell, making us pick between drowning and an air that feels like our insides are melting. Never had one geyser up like that though. I thought for sure a Kusanada was attacking us," he said, becoming concerned about the lack of hell's jailers. "You sound almost disappointed," Ichigo said, looking out into the distance. "Maybe we're lucking out? Sometimes things just go my way?" Kakuto looked at Ichigo, then back to the pool, before continuing their way to the next level. "If that's true, then you must be the luckiest person in hell," he said as they ran through the landscape, Kakuto finally recovering. "You said what you did was enough to condemn you to hell, but you did it for something precious to you," Ichigo said, changing the subject suddenly. "What did you do that was so vile?" "I got my sister killed," Kakuto returned, becoming very somber with a look of smiling melancholy. "I was her good-for-nothing brother and she died because of me. She was all I cared about and I dedicated what life I had to avenging her." Ichigo narrowed his eyes as he remembered his teacher's words. "It doesn't matter why I did it, murder is still unforgivable. I'm not just helping you because I want to spite these bastards. I'm helping you because I can't stand anyone who would harm someone's sister." They came to the edge of a steep hillside that Kakuto jumped onto, Ichigo following right behind him. They soon came to a stairway with hundreds of gates and thousands of candle-lit shrines. "Through here is the next level, and the end of our journey. Where our enemies reside. Karakura town. Okay people, let's do this," Urahara called out, getting the team ready. "We've got to bring out the gates, contain them, and get ourselves protected. Every second counts and Ichigo is probably at the bottom levels by now. We can't afford to waste any time. With that, Tensai and the Kido Corps began to summon and bind the gates of hell with assistance from Squad 12. Barrier stress and hell energies are stable, but rising. Mayuri called out from the monitor he was at, adding in the samples from the Tagabito. He said, prompting Ulquiorra to pull out 2 vials of pure black substance and opening them. Gates should be appearing now. The lieutenant called out as the gates of hell reappeared, solidified, and stayed shut. Stabilized. That's good, but I was hoping they'd be open. Kisuke muttered, thinking of how irritating it was going to be to open them. Grimjow dashed forward, roaring with the intent of busting through and catching up with Ichigo and making sure he got a few hits in. He was then shot back the second he touched the gates. And how did you see that playing out? Hell, 4th level. The pair exited the tunnel, entering the last leg of their journey. Ichigo took in the sights yet again, and started to cough up blood as the burning got to its very worst. All around them were thick clouds of acid from the level above, creating a thick fog throughout the hilly landscape. At their feet was miles and miles of black sand that had trace amounts of erasure and a series of small pale mounds, like a twisted Zen garden of suffering. This is our graveyard, Kakuto said, sounding empty. No hate, no rage, just pain as he gazed upon the resting place of hell. The 4th level of hell is an endless desert of the crushed and charred bones of the sinners that were finally broken. Even when there is nothing left to break, nothing left to torment, we stay here, eternally imprisoned in this endless nightmare. Even if we manage to get to the world of the living, it's always a matter of time before the Kusanada find us and pull us back into our torment. The two looked onto the endless miles of bone sand as Ichigo thought of how many people were needed to make this while Kakuto pondered his own fate. Ichigo, I know this is asking a lot, but would you hear me out? What is it? Ichigo asked, looking at his guide. He already had an idea, but wanted to hear it from the man himself. After we defeat them, could you free me? The sinner said, immediately putting his hands up. Not permanently, I just want to see my sister one last time. He sighed. I hope that helping you would grant me the chance to see her and apologize. After that, I'll return and pay my dues. Ichigo said nothing, shifting his gaze to behind Kakuto, before finally speaking. Lend me your power and I will help you. Ichigo said before returning his gaze to Kakuto, who looked happy for once. Don't worry. You have my full cooperation, he said as he started to run, heading for where the other Tagabito were. Ichigo stood still, nodding his head just once, before dashing forward to join Kakuto. After running for a bit, the pair saw their destination. A half-circle of standing stones with a massive skeleton in the center with a pair of massive stone fingers reaching out, all looking over a pit of lava. From there, the dead rise back up. Every time a sinner dies, we are resurrected in the burning lava. How quickly we come back is heavily dependent on our strength. Ichigo began charging toward the structure, Kakuto right on his tail, moving with great speed. As they neared their destination, a spear of fire came flying at the hybrid. There, standing atop the skull of the skeleton, was the fire user Ichigo fought. He had a wide-rimmed cloak with a similar white outfit to Kakuto, except with squares instead of vertical lines. The other difference was the asymmetrical black pants on his left leg and his mask on his chest to hold his cloak in place with his purple hair covering his left eye. There was another figure next to him, covered in bandages with two parallel scars running down his cheek with tentacles instead of arms. Ichigo and Kakuto dodged the fiery explosive spears until they got to the front of the pit, the cloaked figure gazing down at them. You certainly saved us the trouble of looking for you, Ichigo. The man on the skull called out. I am Shuren, a sinner trapped in hell. The plan was to hold your sisters hostage to force you to open the gates of hell and free us, but we might as well do it like this. He roared as he fired bolts of fire at the two, focusing mainly on Ichigo. The attacks separated the two as the tentacled Gunjo attacked Kakuto. Kakuto versus Gunjo. Return to the pit. Kakuto roared as he cut away Gunjo's tentacles that came from his chest. The sinner circled around and unleashed another barrage that struck with explosive force,
shooting up blooms of bone dust with every strike. Kakuto dodged and cut them but got clipped a few times, not enough to seriously injure him but enough to draw blood.
"Why are you standing in our way?"
Gunjo asked, confused that another sinner would try to stop them from opening the gates of hell and attaining freedom for those that still had their minds.
"You should be aiding us,"
he roared, still unleashing his tentacles like a swarm of missiles.
"I'd never side with the likes of you,"
Kakuto returned, creating an energy shield and causing the tentacles to bounce away harmlessly. Gunjo faltered in confusion of the sudden defense, giving Kakuto ample time to close the distance and impale his opponent.
"Say goodbye," Kakuto roared, pouring his rapier into his next swing to create an energy blade and destroying Gunjo's body. "I've done my part. Now for you, Ichigo,"
he thought, a manic grin coming onto his face as he thought of his coming freedom.
With Ichigo,
Shuren shot spear after spear of fire at Ichigo, but none of them could harm the hybrid. The Soul Reaper was closing the distance fast and deflecting every strike that came close to him. He could do the fast thing and vaporize Shuren with any number of Kido or other rapier attacks, but if they thought he could free them from hell, then he needed to be more careful in his execution. He held up Kyoka Suigetsu and poised to stab before launching himself forward to Shuren's chest. The sinner himself barely managed to dodge, earning himself a deep gash on his chest as the air pressure shattered the skeleton and stones around them.
"Get back here!"
Ichigo roared, dashing at the fleeing sinner, who constructed another spear of flames. He tried to block, but Ichigo without half of his seals quickly overpowered him and sent him hurtling toward the ground. Shuren recovered and brought both hands up, shooting fire bolts extremely rapidly in the hopes of stopping his opponent. Ichigo flashed around the field, closing the distance before grabbing Shuren's head and slamming him on the ground before running and dragging him to the base of the lava pit.
"Never return," Ichigo growled as he threw Shuren into the pit of lava.
"I was hoping for a bit of a challenge."
"Are you really disappointed?" Kakuto asked, walking up to Ichigo and looking into the lava. "I thought you wanted to end this as soon as possible."
"I did, but I still feel cheated in a way," the hybrid admitted as he got behind Kakuto.
"So, how do we do this?"
he asked, making Kakuto turn with a smile on his face, barely able to contain his excitement. The sinner moved his hands, grabbing onto each one of his lengths of chain as they gave a dark shimmer of their existence.
"To free someone, you must break their chains," Kakuto responded, holding them out for Ichigo to cut through. "Only then is our connection to hell severed. Only then are we freed."
He had to resist the urge to scream at Ichigo to cut them and free him from his torment, believing that everything has been going his way.
"Just one more question,"
Ichigo said, raising Kyoka Suigetsu above his head.
"How gullible do you think I am?"
Ichigo roared, shocking Kakuto as the hybrid Spartan kicked the sinner into the lava.
Chapter 83, Out of Hell. Flashback, Ichigo's descent. First level.
The voices of the Kusinada rang in his mind, speaking the crimes of those condemned to hell. The only one he listened to sounded like a warning.
Do not trust.
That was the one he really thought had any value, the only one that had any form of sense. They kept speaking in his head the crimes of the Taigabito and the pleas that he not trust his companion.
I don't trust him,
he roared in his mind, trying to silence the cacophony of ancient whispers.
He's a means to an end. I know how hell works. For a moment, there was silence.
He had peace as he and Kakuto touched down. As he got Kakuto to tell him about the levels of hell, the voices returned.
Did he hear us? Did he speak to us?
He may have, his soul is powerful.
Reeks of power.
He is not a soul reaper.
I'm a hybrid,
Ichigo answered as he and Kakuto ran for the next level.
I've got Hollow and Quincy in me as well. Is that why he hears us? The sinner is looking for us. Can he not see? He's trapped in my hypnosis. I've got this.
The hybrid answered as he and Kakuto dropped into the next level of hell, temporarily vanishing from the Kusinada's sight.
Third level. Enough! The Kusinada roared as it burst from the burning pool of acid, splashing Ichigo and Kakuto.
The sinner must suffer and the living have no place here.
Begone, hybrid.
The jailer reached down for Ichigo, only to be stopped by Zangetsu manifesting and pushing the hand aside.
They found a way to sneak out of hell.
Ichigo argued, refusing to leave while the present threat still existed. They also seemed to have a plan to escape for good.
Hold off until I figure out how to stop it.
Ichigo tried to convince the Kusanada, keeping them out of his sight so as to not break his hypnosis on Kakuto.
He asked Kakuto about his sins, trying to distract himself while Zangetsu kept the lone Kusanada occupied.
He speaks in half-truths. The jailer said as the sinner spoke of getting his sister slain. He's killed too many for it to be revenge. Ichigo said nothing as he and Kakuto descended into the 4th level.
4th level. He cannot be freed. The Kusanada collectively roared, appearing en masse to crush and devour Kakuto. Breaking the chains will destroy the gates.
Hell will poison the world of the living.
Ichigo looked a single Kusanada in the eye and said out loud, "Lend me your power and I will help you." The Kusanada froze, many sinking into the ground and away from sight. Can he do it? The powers of hell would destroy the soul of a living being. He possesses a strong one. He could do it. Kakuto ran off while Ichigo waited for his answer. Our power is yours.
Hell, 4th level, present.
He will return. The Kusanada surrounding Ichigo warned as he glared into the lava.
You ask for our power and we agree to grant it, but you have not taken it.
What are you planning?
They asked as Ichigo backed away from the pit, stretching his neck and earning a few pops.
This is the graveyard of hell, right?
Ichigo stated, feeling the erasure and pushing the fine grains of the bones of crushed sinners with Kyoka Suigetsu.
I'm simply going to kill him. Over and over again until he becomes just another spot on this endless field.
He felt a Ryatsu spike occur behind him as Kakuto emerged from the lava, tearing away his black bandages to reveal horrific burns on his entire right side.
Welcome back. You said you would help me. Kakuto roared, stumbling in pain before pointing his black sword at the hybrid. You said, lend me your power and I will help you. I did just that. Why did you betray me?
Ichigo watched Kakuto impassively before raising up his Zanpakuto.
I never said that to you. I was speaking to them.
Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. Ichigo broke the hypnosis and Kakuto finally saw the Kusanada that surrounded them.
Remember when I slammed this blade into your gut? Did you see it pulsate? The Shinigami asked before sheathing the blade. The moment I had even a millimeter of space between you and my sword, I activated its Shirkai.
Any who sees Kyoka Suigetsu's release is under a perfect hypnosis, seeing, hearing, all of the senses are subject to it. But I'm not so good with the hypnosis, but I can make you see what I see. And since coming to hell, I made every effort to not see a single Kusanada so you would be blind to them. Kakuto's good eye widened in shock before his face twisted with rage. I thank you for the help, but I never trusted you for a second. You bastard! Kakuto roared, flashing in front of Ichigo attempting to cut his head off with his blade charged with energy. His blade never met Ichigo's neck as the hybrid threw a perfect Ikatsu into the sinner's center, punching a hole through Kakuto and sending him flying back. His remains landed in front of a Kusanada, who crushed his body into nothingness. Ichigo returned his attention to the pit, waiting to kill the sinner again. What is his sin? He asked, knowing that Kakuto did kill, but his teacher explained that vengeance or protection would not be enough. He needed to know, needed to understand why Kakuto must suffer. Jinjo tried to steal his powers and did murder several soul reapers in his quest to help Fullbringers, no matter how far he went with what he did. The Dark Ones were trying to destroy Soul Society out of spite. Aizen wanted to replace the Soul King and change a broken system, throwing away his humanity in the process to ascend to a higher plane of existence. Yawatch was a parasitic monster that devours the lives of those around him. Was it his way of cooping? Finding a reason to justify their deaths and dehumanizing them to deal with the blood on his hands. What was Kakuto's crime? He did not lie about his sister, nor about avenging her. But he did not stop, he wanted the world to know his pain. He murdered sisters so that others would know how he felt and brothers when they came for revenge. After his revenge, he wanted the world to suffer.
That was enough for Ichigo, enough to feel no sympathy or remorse.
Kakuto lied to him, tried to destroy the world out of spite, and was every bit the monster that hell tortures.
Ichigo! Kakuto roared as he resurrected again, shaking off the lava before charging at the Soul Reaper again. I'll kill you!
He charged, grabbing one of his chains to use as a lasso to try and throw Ichigo off balance. The shimmering black metal wrapped around the hybrid's arm, while Ichigo steeled his resolve and didn't budge.
1,000 times you can try, he said, grabbing Zangetsu's trench knife. And it won't be any different. The hybrid roared, yanking the chain and pulling Kakuto onto Ichigo's blade.
Kakuto coughed up blood as the blade pierced through him, but he still tried to strike at Ichigo.
This is hell, your prison, and you will suffer. Getsuga Tensho.
Ichigo twisted the blade in Kakuto's gut and swung upwards, destroying his body in a wave of erasure.
He's rather stubborn, he commented after the attack ended, leaving him alone with the Kusanada yet again. His hate is all he has left, they said before they grew alarmed. What is this? Too fast. The pain must be unimaginable.
Before Ichigo could ask what the jailers meant, a black blade cut into Ichigo's side before impaling itself on the ground.
Kakuto was back again, but seemed to be struggling with some great pain. It always took at least a minute for him to come back.
Ichigo thought as he healed and Kakuto yanked his blade back to his hand.
That was almost 20 seconds. What happened? The next level.
The Kusanada sounded out before sinking into the ground, which soon sucked Ichigo and Kakuto into it as well.
The journey was swift and they soon entered a new level of hell.
The first one that Ichigo thought truly resembled the realm of the damned. Rivers of lava filled the landscape, tall columns of stone where the lava poured out, lightning flashing all around, and trees made of bones dotted the land.
Here is his prison,
they said as Kakuto attacked Ichigo again, swinging his blade by the chains in a desire to strike Ichigo. The hybrid used Hirenkyaku to skate through the air and counter with his Quincy bow.
This is the realm where the denizens of hell are truly revived, slowly reformed from the burning lava from bone to flesh.
Accelerating the process means he stayed in, drinking the burning restoration into his being.
He's burning inside and outside.
Ichigo unleashed a licked Regan at Kakuto as the pair continued to descend.
Kakuto used his blade and chains to try and block the barrage, but the rain slowly grew more concentrated as Ichigo managed to gather enough erasure to lock himself in place and compress the spread of the arrows on Kakuto's position. Ichigo! Kakuto roared out as the storm of spirit arrows tore him apart.
Ichigo himself slowly drifted down to the ground next to a lava river.
I gotta tell Yuryu about that, the hybrid said, surprised that he pulled it off. That could be useful.
The Kusanada began to appear from the columns, just in time to warn Ichigo that something else was wrong.
This is wrong. Defies the law of hell. Watch out.
They called out as Kakuto burst out of the river, glaring at Ichigo with a fist cocked back. Reflexively, Ichigo raised his own arms while reinforcing with his Bloodvene and He arrow, but he wasn't expecting the power behind the attack. The result had a pulse of Kakuto's blue erasure that felt much stronger than before and sent Ichigo flying until he cratered in a column.
He's absorbed the erasure of another Tagabito? One of the hiding sinners.
Ichigo pried himself out of the column, landing just as Kakuto was walking toward him.
Absorbed one of the other sinners? Ichigo asked, shocked but not letting that show in any way.
I thought you hated those guys. Kakuto shot toward him instantly, swinging his blade with enough force that he created a shockwave of air, forcing Ichigo to the side. He attempted another swing but Ichigo caught his sword hand while his free hand got locked in with Kakuto's, both sides trying to overpower the other.
Right now there's no one I hate more than you, he roared, the ground cracking and breaking in their struggle. And I'll stop at nothing to escape from hell. But before I can try that again, I'll be sure you're trapped here with me. He tried to throw Ichigo aside but found himself unable to move the hybrid, whose grip was getting stronger. Did you forget about my seals that I took off? Ichigo asked, tightening his grip on Kakuto.
They restrain my power so that I can actually fight instead of crushing my opponents in an instant.
And I'll repeat this.
Ichigo threw his head forward and bashed Kakuto in the face, nearly ripping off the sinner's arms in the process, making the Tagabito stagger back into a lava river.
1,000 times you can try, and it won't be any different.
He threw a nameless bala that destroyed Kakuto's body from the waist up while the rest sunk into the lava.
If he can absorb the powers of other sinners, does that mean he can break the chains himself? This has never happened before. We have no precedents.
But we also might not need to worry. The jailers said as Kakuto burst out of the lava next to Ichigo, aiming to decapitate the Shinigami. Ichigo managed to block the attack, wincing as lava splashed on him before realizing that Kakuto's attack felt so much weaker than before. The sinner threw a punch, intent on using the power he previously had, only to feel his hand break upon impact.
Looks like you don't understand your new ability. Ichigo's hand cackled with energy and electricity. Disappointing.
Heido, number 63.
Raikoho.
Kakuto was instantly vaporized in the Kido blast and tearing a gorge through the land of hell.
He's getting it back, isn't he? He already has.
Ichigo felt the attack coming from behind and raised his blade to block, only to see a chain of hell grinding against his blade's edge. Seeing the sparks flying from the attack, he dropped his defense and let the chain slam into him, not even noticing the blade until it cut across his being.
My Rieastu is so great that my presence can disintegrate people that get close. How is he cutting me?
Ichigo demanded, feeling the cut on his chest heel. Kakuto, meanwhile, bore a savage maniacal grin as he injured Ichigo.
What's the matter, Ichigo? The sinner yelled out from the top of a column. Worried you might break one of these chains? Are you at my mercy?
Ichigo remained silent as Kakuto swung his chains and Ichigo again.
The hybrid disappeared in a burst of speed before reappearing before Kakuto. Never. Getsuga Tensho.
He said before swinging and destroying Kakuto again.
So, answers? Ichigo asked of the Kusanada. Hell itself is pushing your defense.
You have not taken up our power to protect yourself.
You are as vulnerable as any sinner. Ichigo groaned in aggravation, finding less and less appeal to stay in hell for any reason.
He returns, and with a new power. Ichigo saw Kakuto rise up from the burning pool and raised his hand to unleash a Siro.
The blast flew toward Kakuto with the sinner making no effort to move or dodge, only smirking as it closed in on him.
He then stood straight up with a mouth appearing on his body and sucking the Raisher attack into it. Ichigo looked on in shock as he processed what had just happened.
Well, I'm waiting.
Kakuto snidely commented as Ichigo shot a relatively weak bala at the Tagabito, with a repeat of what happened earlier.
Is that all? You're way too confident for someone that's been dying for the last 5 minutes.
Ichigo commented as he tried to identify any difference between when Kakuto got a strength boost and this new ability, growling as he failed to find one.
Guess I'll just have to be cautious about the fight from now on. Isn't he now vulnerable to our Oswalin?
Zangetsu suggested, helping Ichigo strategize.
Now there's 2 ways to end this instantly. I'd rather not do that with any sinner.
I'm uncomfortable with taking a Kusanada's power as it is.
I don't know what hell's power will do to me.
Ichigo returned as Kakuto began to fire a rain of Raisher blasts at Ichigo.
I'll say this.
Ichigo thought as he dodged the onslaught of Raisher.
At least this is keeping me guessing.
Kakuto used his own speed to close the distance and swing an energy blade at Ichigo, which split into thousands and spread out to get rid of any escape for the Soul Reaper.
Oh crap.
The blades raced to Ichigo, who pulled out Kyokusu Ajetsu and used it to deflect, cut, and block the thousands of blades coming at him.
Kakuto kept up the onslaught, laughing as he put Ichigo on the defensive.
The hybrid, going through the list of Kido spells in his head, brought the Kyber blade of Zangetsu up from behind. The blade levitated as he let go and smacked the hilt, making it spin around in a circle and getting faster and faster.
Heido, number 58. Tenran.
Ichigo roared, getting behind his blade and stopping its spin, which created a powerful tornado that shot toward Kakuto.
The energy blades shattered and dispersed as the wind hit them while flying toward Kakuto. The sinner bore a momentary look of shock before smiling and letting a mouth appear on him again, sucking in the Kido. "That's not going to work, Ichigo." The man laughed out, letting glee at his victory take over. Ichigo narrowed his eyes at the man before focusing on his chain links. With an idea in his head, he shot forward just as Kakuto finished absorbing the Kido and caught one of the chains. Ichigo let out a roar as he yanked down on the chain, sending Kakuto plummeting to the ground. Ichigo flashed above and breathed in, enhancing his arms with his Hiero in both blood vein and artery. Ryokan! Ichigo roared out, unleashing a barrage of punches that made the entire level tremble. When Ichigo stopped, the already unrecognizable remains were consumed by the lava. Ichigo stretched his upper body, feeling the strain of using one of the more difficult Hakuta techniques, as he waited for Kakuto's next revival. The sinner appeared in front of Ichigo, fist ready to unleash the strength pulse of one of the Tagabito that he absorbed. Ichigo met that strike with his own, completely destroying Kakuto's arm. "Did you forget that I'm stronger, even with that strength boost of yours?" he asked, earning silence from Kakuto before Ichigo shot him with a Sokatsui. Now he waited for Kakuto's next attempt. 10 seconds passed, then 20, 30, 40, 50, 1 minute, 2 minutes. "He comes!" the Kusanada warned, as Kakuto rose from the lava. "Something has changed," they said as Ichigo shot a low-powered Shikaho at him, only for it to be devoured. Kakuto still had that insane look in his eyes, as if his constant defeats and death had been breaking his psyche and hate is his only driving force, as he shot toward Ichigo. He threw a pulse punch, which Ichigo did block, but the force drove him back by a few inches before Kakuto threw another and another before sending Ichigo flying. "Looks like he's absorbed more than one Tagabito this time," Ichigo guessed as he landed on one of the columns, Kakuto appearing in front of him and attempting to knock him into the lava. Ichigo grabbed his wrist before spinning and doing an over-the-shoulder throw, with Kakuto going right back into the lava. "This might be good training after all," he said, stretching himself out and waited for Kakuto to return again. This time, he came back after 1 minute. "I will kill you!" the sinner roared as he shot a continuous barrage of Racier blasts. Ichigo dodged while Kakuto's attack followed him until he got pinned between the storm of blasts and Kakuto's use of his chains, slamming the ground with great pulverizing force. "Now you're mine!" Kakuto called out with glee, believing that Ichigo was trapped. Ichigo reinforced himself with Hiero and blood vein and took the onslaught with a cry of agony. After several seconds of that, Kakuto stopped to examine his work. Hell would bring Ichigo back, but with this much he'd surely become a denizen of hell, just like him. The moment he got within arm's reach, Ichigo grabbed his ankle and slammed him against the ground. "I'm really disappointed in myself," Ichigo said while pulling himself out of the ground, roughed up but none the worse for wear. "I should have been able to dodge that." He threw a punch at Kakuto, but stopped at the last moment when a mouth appeared where he was punching. "Guessing this means you eat more than just Racier," he said, pulling Kakuto up and into a chokehold before snapping the sinner's neck. The body went limp and Ichigo threw it into the lava, destroying Kakuto yet again. "Any of you keeping score?" Ichigo called out to the Kusanada, who continued to watch and wait for Ichigo to finish. That was the 10th kill. Kakuto was getting faster with taking the power. And the restoration after. Ichigo's ears caught a rushing sound as he rolled into a dodge, avoiding several tentacles that tried to spear him. "He only has 2 this time," they advised Ichigo, who threw a light bala at Kakuto which was easily blocked. "Guess it's just strength and those tentacles then," Ichigo thought in relief, gathering Racier in his Kyber blade before swinging it down. "Getsuga Tensho!" he roared, unleashing the destructive attack to a smiling Kakuto. He sprouted more tentacles from his chest, formed a barrier, and had mouths appear on each which began drinking up the Getsuga. Ichigo winced, cursing that he was so easily fooled, and that was one of the more horrifying images that he did not need to see. And there goes my peaceful night of sleep later. Die! Kakuto roared out as he brought out more tentacles with glowing tips before shooting down an even greater storm of Racier blasts. Ichigo reinforced himself again and began blocking every blast he could,
swinging his blades so fast that his arms became blurs. Unfortunately, the blasts were so numerous that Ichigo couldn't deflect them all, but he was also so focused on blocking every attack he could that he failed to notice the tentacles Kakuto stuck in the ground. Soon, Ichigo found his arms and legs bound with Kakuto's tentacles and Zangetsu's blades torn from his hands.
"Any last words, Ichigo?" Kakuto asked with a sneer. "I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going,"
Ichigo said with snark while his arms charred and cracked with Kido.
Kakuto looked confused as he readied to impale Ichigo with the tentacles.
Okay, obligatory tentacle joke aside, I do have 6.
Hado number 96, Edo Queso.
The hybrid roared as he blew up, the Kido exploding with the force of a thermobaric nuke and changing Hell's landscape again. Ichigo was in the center of a crater, which was quickly pooling with lava, and the surrounding bone trees and stone columns were reduced to rubble from the pressure of the explosion.
Ichigo created a erasure platform and ascended above the lava, waiting for Kakuto to return. "My hate will never quell."
Ichigo heard Kakuto roar as glowing hot tentacles wrapped around his limbs, trying to drag him into the lava. The sudden pull almost threw him into the burning pool, would have done so too if Ichigo didn't manage to widen his platform at the last moment. It didn't cut the tentacles, but it did give Ichigo ground to stand on. The result had him fall face first on the solid erasure as he wrestled against Kakuto's own might, stolen as it was.
And 12.
Ichigo roared out himself as he forced himself up and tore the tentacles off, throwing Kakuto into the erasure before the limbs severed and he fell back into the lava. The hybrid himself started panting as the constant fights began to take a recognizable toll on him.
"He is really stubborn,"
Ichigo said as he got ready for the next assault. "He has consumed another power.
His mind is snapping."
Desperation claws at him. The jailers warned as the minutes ticked by, the wait finally ending when Kakuto burst out from the top of one of the pillars.
Ichigo stood and waited, believing he was ready for anything.
Tentacles sprouted from Kakuto's body as they all aimed at the hybrid. The first shot fired, followed by 100, then 1,000, and continuing as they blasted something new at the Shinigami. Ichigo hesitated, feeling much less erasure in the attack, until the first bullet made contact with his blade. The sudden explosion nearly blew Zangetsu's blade out of his hand and the following barrage pelted Ichigo with such force that he lost his control and the erasure platform dispersed. Focusing more on stopping the assault, Ichigo threw his hand out and fired a Siro.
The result had the explosive barrage end, but Kakuto was absorbing the blast.
The upside was Ichigo managing enough freedom to shoot himself away from the lava.
"Maybe it's time I end this,"
he thought, analyzing the damage done to him.
"Senshimaro will be pissed if I ruin these clothes."
He was riddled with burns, scuff marks, and tears on his restraining shihakusho and bodysuit.
Plus, I was doing this for training. There wouldn't be any point if my Ryatsu is as potent here as out there.
He finished before landing in a tumble several meters beyond the lip of the new lake of lava.
"Now, where were?"
Ichigo asked before noticing that Kakuto vanished. Suddenly the ground erupted as tentacles ensnared Ichigo, tying down his arms as one more appeared above his head before opening its own gaping maw.
"Now I'm definitely not getting any sleep tonight,"
he thought as the mouth came down to devour him.
"Hado number 11, Suzuri Raiden."
Ichigo called out, shocking the limbs into releasing him before the mouth could close.
"It's only a matter of time, Ichigo,"
Kakuto yelled out, revealing himself at the edge of the pool, before bringing out more tentacles to shoot at the hybrid.
"I'm getting closer and closer to killing you."
He shot another massive continuous barrage at Ichigo, who finally noticed the tentacles that pierced into the ground. Refusing to get caught again, Ichigo shot into the air and began going faster and faster until multiple copies of himself littered the air above Kakuto.
"You think this will make a difference?"
he roared as he shot wildly after Ichigo, only for the hybrid to appear in front with both fists planted into the sinner's gut.
13. Sokatsu,
Ichigo said, causing a massive shockwave of force from where he struck as Kakuto's body broke apart before exploding outward violently. Ichigo panted as he took the moment to relax, Kakuto's revivals taking longer and longer every time he took in more power.
"How much longer can he keep this up?" he asked as a Kusanada appeared behind him.
His mind has already snapped. He only cares about killing you.
Nothing else matters to him anymore.
They said as Kakuto began to rise once more. He roared out in primal fury, no more words, no more civility, just unbridled rage. He sprouted his tentacles which began to fire razor blasts, explosive bullets, and waves of fire. Ichigo got back up and flashed away, planning to cut Kakuto down from behind. But instead of losing Kakuto, the sinner managed to keep track and follow. Getting an idea, Ichigo began flashing all around, making sure that Kakuto kept his eyes on him the entire time. Shatter! Ichigo said, unsheathing Kyoka Suigetsu and making sure Kakuto saw it.
Kyoka Suigetsu.
The hybrid dropped and turned, visualizing himself still going forward, as Kakuto flew face first into the Zanpakuto's edge.
14.
Ichigo said as Kakuto split in half and fell back to the ground.
This is getting us nowhere. Ichigo groaned, personally having enough.
In the end, this was becoming no different than fighting Zaraki. Just a matter of being faster and stronger than the sinner, and Kakuto was barely holding on to anything but sheer rage and hate at this point. Ichigo sat down on a column that was clear of lava, where the very sinner soon rose up and prepared to attack before Ichigo spoke.
I'm done. Kakuto paused, confused as Ichigo relaxed. What? The sinner asked, oblivious to the reappearance of a Kashanda heading for them. I'm done fighting you. The hybrid clarified, sheathing his blades. I'm bored. You're boring me.
I only stuck around because I figured I might get something out of this, but it's the same as fighting Zaraki.
Only much more whiny.
Ichigo continued, infuriating the sinner more and more.
You think that you can just walk away?
Kakuto roared, slithering a tentacle toward Ichigo along the ground.
You think you can just decide when this is over? Ichigo turned to face the Tagabito.
Yes. The Kusanada raised his hand, Kakuto looking on in surprise and fear as he just remembered why the jailers didn't stop them.
I can. As the hand came down, the Kusanada took on a golden glow and began to unravel into spirit threads.
All of which began to wrap around Ichigo as he felt the powers of hell pour into him. When it solidified, golden plate armor covered Ichigo's upper body.
Segmented along his muscles with skulls on his chest, shoulders, and a now golden hollow mask.
No mortal soul has ever before had this power in their hands.
The Kusanada said as Ichigo unsheathed his Kyber Zangetsu. Do what you came here to do. Finish this. Give him his sentence. Seal him.
They cried out as Ichigo swung his blade down. Kakuto was too paralyzed with shock and fear as the wave of power crashed into him. The chains were destroyed, his skin and flesh were torn away, and he was a charred skeleton, but Kakuto still felt alive.
Kakuto, for your crimes, I condemn you to a new punishment.
Ichigo said as golden chains burst out from the lava and attached themselves to Kakuto's skeleton, just as he regenerated. He roared out in frustration as he felt his flesh being devoured, finding that the links connected to his flesh resembled the heads of the Kusanada.
You've changed the rules, so you can face a new hell.
This lynx will devour you constantly, feeding the Kusanada and strengthening them so that no sinner could ever challenge the authority of hell again. The chains wrapped around Kakuto, putting him into a golden cocoon of Kusanada skulls that chewed away at his being. He began to scream in pain as Ichigo apathetically watched. You will be trapped like this, given the erasure of every sinner that was fully crushed and broken so that you can fuel the Kusanada. And keep hell a one-way street for people like you. Kakuto could say nothing, only howl in agony as the chains even went inside his mouth and into his guts, before he sank into the ground.
Into a new and inaccessible level of hell. And now to seal up the holes.
Ichigo said as he flew up to the previous level. Let's put these bones to work, shall we?
Do it.
Ichigo heard a new, darker voice speak out. Putting it out of his mind, Ichigo waved his hand as the dust of the crushed bones rose up and into the upper levels of hell. Ichigo reappeared at the first level with the towering pillars of bones as he waved his hand to reveal the tiers the Tagabito used to escape. The dust flew to the tiers and sealed each one up with a different image of pain and suffering. And that should take care of that. Ichigo sighed, fully relaxing now that hell was no longer passively damaging him. So, who the, here I guess, are you? He asked, turning to a crimson cloud with glowing green eyes.
The king of hell or something?
You could say that.
A voice replied, though Ichigo remained unimpressed.
I am the leader of devils after all.
But that is unimportant. You have my thanks, Ichigo Kurosaki.
You see, I'm involved with a rather distracting matter that forced my attention away and caused a blind eye to what was happening.
Don't expect it to happen again. I only did this to protect my sisters. Understandable. If we ever meet face to face, I hope it'll be under more pleasant circumstances.
Whatever. Ichigo dismissed, opening the gates of hell before flying out. The armor dissolved off of Ichigo, though a red circle appeared unnoticed on his back just under the right shoulder blade. The hybrid flew into Grinjao, causing the two to bash their heads and fall to the ground. After rubbing his skull, he looked to see Urahara and Tessai giving him a stern glare, Ulquiorra helping his comrade up, and Mayuri giving an incredibly creepy smile.
I'm in trouble, aren't I? Karakura Town.
Senna was doing a patrol through the city, making sure everything was normal in the area. The rest of the squad was either doing the same thing or working to stabilize the spiritual imbalances in the city. The hollow thread died down after Ichigo claimed his throne, but that didn't mean anyone could fully relax just yet. Only after everything was put back to normal, not that anything was normal for a good chunk of the year for the Soul Society. She was passing over a parking lot when she noticed a Senkaman opening up, with something wrapped up in a cloak falling out of it. Curious, she went down to investigate, finding a naked green-haired girl.
I should probably report this,
she said before placing the girl on her shoulders, still wrapped up for her own modesty.
Soul Society, Squad 1 office. Completely irresponsible. Yamamoto yelled, restraining himself from beating his student's skull in with his cane.
Shortly after leaving Hell, Urahara and Mayuri began a thorough examination on Ichigo.
Mayuri got a severed limb and began running tests at his labs while Urahara was performing scans to find any abnormalities.
His presence and the requirement of Ichigo staying still was what was sparing the hybrid from a much-deserved beating. You do not need to put everything on your shoulders, and you were the most dangerous risk to Hell should you have actually severed one of the chains.
I never forgot your lesson, Master.
Ichigo returned, trying to be respectful in the hopes of calming down the dragon. I was never going to do anything to break one of the chains.
The Kusanada themselves aided me, which was unnecessary. We would have been able to handle the situation. We have methods and protocol for dealing with matters of Hell.
Your actions introduced an unneeded risk and have shown that you still have not learned an important lesson: discipline. The head captain continued as Urahara studies his scans and received a Hell butterfly from Mayuri. Maintaining a calm and focused mind is key to not just the battlefield but to everyday life.
Yamamoto went to seat himself and continue with his own eternal struggle, paperwork. While we continue with the recovery projects in Siriitii and Karakura Town, you will be back in stasis. Urahara suddenly interrupted, just as Riroka came in with cat doll that had a glass torso.
Before anyone could ask, Ichigo began puking up blood in black ooze. Urahara pulled out a syringe before jamming it into Ichigo's neck as his veins turned black.
Riroka permitted him into Nathikuan and he was sucked into the doll.
According to my scans and Mayuri's own studies, Hell's power is operating as a toxin to Ichigo's systems. He took the doll and opened a screen on the back, typing away commands and instructions to the device.
He needs to fully adapt and acclimate to the power of Hell.
But if I had to guess, the only changes this would be to make him immune to Hell.
So he will be fine in the end? Genryusai asked, making Urahara nod and easing the old man's concerns.
Then I will trust his recovery to you in Squad 12.
Do we have Ishin's latest report? Ishin and his squad were placed in charge of exorcism and stabilization to Karakura Town after it was switched with a photocopy.
The end result caused a troubling imbalance to the region. The last report was just before we left the world of the living. Kisuke responded, having the reports redirected to himself and Mayuri while they were in the world of the living.
But there is something odd. The last communique from them to Squad 12 is listed as hours ago.
We sent a message back, but didn't hear anything. Urahara said, growing suspicious of the situation.
If I may, can I perform a survey on the precipice world? Yamamoto thought for a moment before sighing.
The sooner you can fully replicate Garganta used the same way the wizards in Ichigo use them, the better, he said before waving his hand.
You have my permission to conduct your investigation. Gather who you might need for assistance. Urahara bowed and left to make his preparations.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Hollows to Holes. Alright, they should be waking up right about now. Mayuri told Ishido as yin and yang began to stir. Their vitals are stable and we can test their capabilities soon. Lord Ishido?
Ine asked as she and her twin sat up, the blanket covering their modesty falling to their waist.
My chest hurts. Yes, I'd imagine it would. There used to be nothing there. Mayuri returned, looking over some scans. Hey, we have some fine titsue. Yang yelled out as the twins finally noticed they were topless. If you have heart attacks, I'm not replacing them. Chapter 84, Finding Doubles. Karakura Town, Squad 15 Barracks. Anything? Ishin asked Lisa, who was still examining the girl Senna brought in.
Hiyori discovered the Sankaman opening and the bubbly Soul Reaper brought in the unconscious girl soon after. Though the communication system with Soul Society was being a little buggy as of late, Hiyori was still able to access the list of Shinigami personnel and was going through that ever since.
Still nothing, sir.
Lisa answered, ending the keto she was using to sense anything from the sleeping girl, now dressed in a red skirt with a cream cardigan. No erasure, no heartbeat. If she wasn't there in front of us, then I would doubt she even exists.
Well, doesn't that sound familiar?
Senna groaned out, thinking back on her short life. She stayed with her captain to deliver her report and was genuinely curious about the girl.
Are we going to have to worry about some crazy exiled clan or a bunch of blank slate souls? I doubt it.
Ishin returned, taking a step back to assess the situation. There shouldn't be another Shinenju so soon, and I'm pretty sure we've dealt with the last of any notable threats with a grudge against Soul Society. Well, Ichigo mentioned that Otsugai has a lot of Zanpakuto that look like people.
Could she be one of those? Senna guessed again, throwing around any possibility she could think of. We'd still feel something out of that,
Hiyori said, coming in with the results of her search.
And I found a fat load of nothing.
She doesn't match any description of active Shinigami, and the closest that I could get is a resemblance to an inactive Shinigami by the name of Okoyashima, a former member of Squad 12.
Isn't that the guy that created Project Spearhead? Ishin asked, remembering the controversy from his time as captain of Squad 10. He noticed Senna's confused look and went on to explain.
Shortly after Kiryu Hikifune created the artificial souls that most Shinigami use, there was a proposal to use that same process to create the modified versions that were supposed to be combat capable to help with the shortage of Soul Reapers and the abundance of hollows and lost souls. Khan was one such mod soul. Unfortunately, those jackasses in Central 46 decided against the project after it was already in progress. Hiyori continued, having done her homework on important events she missed or forgot during the exile of the wizards. Apparently he snapped and tried downloading his brain into something.
He's been locked in the maggot's nest in a catatonic state ever since. We should probably look into that case again, just to be sure.
Ishin advised, earning a nod from Hiyori as she went back to try and fix the communication system from her end.
Okay, maybe we haven't dealt with all the people that would have a grudge against Soul Society. Squad 12, Underground Lab. We'll keep Ichigo in here,
Urahara said as Riruka pulled the stasis tube that held the hybrid out of her cat plushie. Be sure to keep him stabilized. And remember that that's an order, Mayuri, he clarified to his lieutenant, getting a dismissive wave in response. Now, I'm not sure what we'll find in the Dong-ai, but you do remember where the contingency plans are in case of emergency.
Correct?
Yes, all disguised in a photo album with you and those kids you left with Ishin. The deranged scientist hissed as he wanted to get on with his own research.
Urahara kept looking at Mayuri with a measure of expectation, causing the man to sigh.
As I, Mayuri Karatsuchi, take command of Squad 12 in the absence of my captain, I vow that I will not and shall not abuse my authority and keep my experiments to acceptable moral, ethical, and legal boundaries. This satisfied Urahara as he gave a nod and proceeded to pack his equipment for his foray into the precipice world. Try to establish communication back with Squad 15 while I'm gone.
The man continued as Riruka placed Ichigo on a shelf.
Since there seems to be a big time delay between the two, chances are they might have a clue they've been unable to send back to us.
You seem to think that I'm completely negligent in my duties. Mayuri growled.
I know how absorbed you can get in your own research, Mayuri.
The captain returned.
And I'm certain you have the same ideas that I do about what might be happening in the Dongai. The delays in received and sent messages between Soul Society and the world of the living suggest that there's a growing time gap. An easy fix, but how did it get to that point in the first place?
Mayuri stated, brainstorming a possible answer.
Just as it's an easy fix, it's an easy problem to create. And since the closest thing the Arrancar had to a scientist is dead, that leaves a small number of people that could and would make this problem. Urahara returned as he listed off the necessary qualities for a profile of the suspect if someone did create the issue. First, this person would need an extensive knowledge and understanding of the precipice world, which should narrow down the list greatly, but with Aizen as a factor, we might not have an idea of who knows what to do and how to do it. Many people would never have pegged Aizen for a scientist at first glance, but the man was careful and precise in his experiments and execution. Second, the person in question would have to have had enough time to set this up and all under our noses until this moment, if whoever did this counted on us finding out about it at all.
Mayuri continued.
Again, that could be anyone that could slip our notice due to the war preparations. And if there is an outside factor that forced this person's hand, it might be something in the world of the living since Soul Society's baggage always seems to find its way there. Urahara groaned, lamenting how poor of a job the Gotiai of old did that made so many problems now. For now, focus on re-establishing communication. After that, we should start our investigation with the head of Precipice World Studies, so keep an eye on Kagarosa Inaba.
Try not to die. I'd be terribly inconvenienced if I had to be captain again. Mayuri finished, wishing Urahara luck in his own way.
Precipice World.
And this only confirms our suspicions. Urahara sighed as he continued the study.
With him was Shinji, Kensei, Byakuya, Toshiro, and their lieutenants assisting in offering additional protection. The exception was that Hisagi stayed with Squad 9, someone needed to be in charge there.
Someone is currently controlling the Dongai. The only question is why and how.
The other Soul Reapers looked to him with concern, unaware of the slight shifting in the restrictive current.
But now that we've established what is currently causing this, we can fix it, or we can run.
The captain said, noticing the presence of the Kotatsu.
I vote the latter.
Move. Toshiro called out as the Shinigami charged toward Senkaman leading to the living world, as the cleaner was coming in from Soul Society. As they ran, a second Kotatsu appeared and started heading straight for them.
Our little rat is controlling the cleaner as well? How did he get two of them? Kensei asked as the two trains of spacetime current came barreling toward them.
More to that, how do we get out of here? The wizard asked, getting more and more nervous.
I've got an idea, but the success will be questionable.
Urahara said, bracing himself.
Squad 15 barracks.
Well, we've got good news and bad news.
Hiyori said, reporting to Ishin.
The good news is that the girl woke up and is under watch and guard. The bad news is that communications with Soul Society is still screwy and we still have no idea what or who the hell the girl is. She just keeps calling Yuryu and other men perverts, while refusing to talk to anyone else. She finished, earning a sigh from the captain. No name, no idea what she is, and no identity other than a resemblance to a comatose prisoner from a century ago.
Ishin summed up, going over the current matter. Remember when we thought things would calm down after Aizen's defeat while we focus on the Quincy? This is rather annoying.
Especially since we still don't know what's going on with the communications system and the precipice world.
The girl returned.
I do have this one theory about what the girl might be though.
as hard as it may be to believe. Before she could continue, Lisa came in. "Captain Ishin, we have visitors,"
she said before the captain's Kisuk's team came in.
"Should I prepare tea, sir?" "That would be nice, Lisa."
The third seat left to get the refreshments while Hiyori stood next to the Squad 15 captain. Captains Kuchiki, Shinji, Kensei, Urahara. He immediately flashed to the youngest and held him up with a smile, and to Shiro.
"To what do I owe the pleasure?" he asked. "Put me down,"
the 10th squad captain said bluntly, causing Ishin to raise his eyebrow before doing so. "We were investigating a disturbance in the precipice world. The ice wielder started before Byakuya took over. We found that someone was controlling the Donai and led us into a trap. Shortly after arriving, whoever is behind this sent the cleaner after us,"
the noble said, looking to Urahara.
Thankfully, Captain Urahara figured out a way we could escape the precipice world.
"Does it have anything to do with those bracelets?"
Hiyori interrupted, noticing a brass-colored bracelet with a black gem tassel on the left wrist of each captain.
Urahara held up the accessory in question and smiled.
"Yeah, these babies kept us in an isolated time field outside of the influence of the Dongai,
rendering the entire trap pointless," the man explained while Hiyori and Ishin shared a glance. Before they could continue, Momo and Ranjiko came in.
"Captains, we found her," the Squad 5 lieutenant said, sounding more confident than anyone heard her before.
"We found Nozomi Kujo." "Is that the girl we have in custody?" Ishin asked as Urahara began to explain.
"She's a rogue Soul Reaper that erased her records and escaped from Soul Society. We suspect that she's involved with whoever is behind the time gap in the precipice world."
The captains got up and ready to move.
"Now that we've found her, we can take her back for interrogations back in the Siriitii."
"That's not going to happen,"
the father said, causing the other captains and lieutenants to glare at Ishin.
"You said it yourself. The Donai is a dangerous place. The safest place to interrogate Nozomi Kujo is right here, in my barracks."
Ishin sent a confident smile to the group.
"You can watch, but I can't let you guys jump into danger like that." "With Yuryu, interrogation room?" "Let's see." The Quincy started, entering the empty and blank room of Sekiseki Stone.
After the reveal of her having a connection to the disturbances and whoever was causing them, she was moved to the prison and interrogation section of the barracks.
"Nozomi Kujo, records removed from the Soul Reaper database and currently the leading suspect in our current investigations."
He looked away from the papers to put his gaze on the girl in question, sitting in the corner and curled up defensively.
"Things would go a lot easier for you if you cooperated. I told you I'm not talking to any of you." "Pervert,"
she said, calling the lieutenant a perv for the 20th time.
"Leave me alone."
The Quincy sighed, getting tired of being called a pervert, when Oraheim walked in.
"Let me try," she suggested.
Thinking he could use the break, Yuria gave her the files and exited the room. Shinji and Kensei were in the hallway with their lieutenants, giving Yuria disguised glares before returning their attention to the interrogation room. The only other noises were those coming from Ishin, Toshiro, and Ranjiku catching up as his captain put it while Kisuke was reminiscing about his old home and Senna was playing with Mashiro. "You still won't get anything out of her," Kensei suddenly said, gaining Yuria's attention. "She has literally nothing to gain from talking and everything to lose if she does.
Why would she tell us anything? We probably should risk going through the Donai again,"
Shinji said, losing patience with the situation. "It's too dangerous to leave things as they are." Yuria said nothing as he left, though he was keeping tabs on them during their stay.
Squad 12, Mayuri's playground.
It was practically silent as he made his way into the dark lab, nothing beyond the tapping of his cane, the bubbling of various chemicals, and the blips and whirs of computers and machines. The man searched the off-limits section of Squad 12's underground research facility, looking for one thing of great importance. What would either be the key to an ultimate creation or the single most dangerous thing to his ambitions? He had to be careful, quick, and silent, or the plan he spent so much time on would crumble around him.
This was the main lab of Mayuri Kuratsuchi, and he knew precisely how dangerous that man could be.
He spent half an hour searching the lab before frustration got the better of him.
Damn it! Where is he?
He growled before a monitor came on, bathing him in pale light as Mayuri appeared on the screen.
Looking for a certain hybrid, are we Kagarosa?
The lieutenant asked, shocking the man in question.
Inaba was wearing a flamboyant yellow robe with a high collar that shielded the back of his head.
The other identifier was the man's dual-colored hair, green on the right side and yellow on the left.
Lieutenant Kuratsuchi.
The traitor returned, glaring at his superior officer.
Can't say I'm surprised.
I thought highly of you as my captain during your tenure as such.
Far more than Captain Urahara. You can't butter me up, Inaba. I've already gathered what you're planning. Mayuri responded, his image shaking as he picked up a camera. And I've got the evidence from your lab as well,
he said as the background changed rapidly, evidence of the man using flash step to reach his new destination. Manipulating the precipice world, attempting to trap all of the top Shinigami in there and replace them with Regai copies infused with mod souls. Ambitious, and you probably would have gotten away with it, or at least make it that much more challenging, if it wasn't for one misstep on your part.
And what would that be? Kagarosa asked, feeling a slight headache coming on.
You're the top expert on the Dong Eye, everyone in the squad knows that.
Kuratsuchi answered. Of course we'd suspect you right away. And one of the many contingencies that Urahara made is that his personal computer is linked to everything in the squad.
Your misstep was enacting your plan and not covering your footsteps immediately.
How is that new nerve gas, by the way? What?
Inaba said before getting into a coughing fit, finally hearing a subtle hiss of gas. Those Shiba siblings during the memory incident revealed that our security measures could use some more work, so I've developed a new gas and rigged my lab to release it whenever someone without clearance goes in. I just recently tested it on your Regai clones, but all that tells me is you did shoddy work.
The doors opened again as three masked figures came in.
They're still alive, part of another experiment Kasuke and I are working on. If you could escape, that would be most beneficial to us as well.
The monitor shut off after that. Bastard!
Inaba cursed, turning to face his opponents, Ashido, In, and Yang.
Go mad, Raikou!
He yelled out, spinning his cane, which turned into a double-headed Volglaive and kept spinning.
Before Ashido could attack, Inaba disappeared. Squad 15 barracks. Nozomi stayed curled in that corner, far from the door, and trying to remember what she knows she had forgotten.
She knew the image of the location she wanted to go to, but not where it was.
As of yet, she wasn't even allowed out of the building.
They did clothe her and feed her, but she had a mission and she needed to get out of there. Especially since she didn't want to be found by a certain someone that sent those Regai after her.
Her thoughts were interrupted as the door was flung open, revealing Rinji and Byakuya. You're coming with us, Byakuya stated, his eyes flashing a pale purple along with Rinji's.
The tattooed man came in to drag her, prompting her to try and run. A practice in futility as the man landed a solid blow to her gut and knocked her out. The two began to quickly make their way out of the building, regrouping with the rest of their team and reaching the door leading out.
Running directly into an ambush of the seated members of Squad 15, Jackie, and Jericho. Jericho! Ishin said as the eye-patched man stepped forward and turned a dial on his chest. I'm going to sleep now. While I am, no Senkaman will open until I wake, he said, before passing out with Jackie catching him and creating a clean bubble. You're pretty good for imposters, but I figured you were fakes from the beginning, Ishin said as he unsheathed his blade while the other got ready to fight as well. Now you are going to tell me what I want to know or this will get very ugly, the man growled.
Suddenly a Garganta opened up, revealing the real captains and lieutenants.
All led by Halibel and her fraction. Don't bother Ishin, Urahara stated as he and the others unsheathed their blades. I can explain everything we need to know.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Deleted scenes. Interrogation. I'm not talking, you pervert, Nozomi told the Quincy, who frankly had had enough of the girl. For the last time, I'm not a pervert. He yelled before getting an idea. But I'll show you one, he said, going to the door. Hey Lisa, go nuts with her, he called out, leaving the room. Almost a minute later, Lisa appeared with a long clothes rack filled with different outfits. Strip, she ordered with an emotionless tone, but a burning lust in her eyes. I think I made a mistake, Nozomi thought as Lisa came closer, with a micro bikini and cat ears in her hands. Contingencies. Let's see, no, that's for viral breakouts. Mayuri dismissed, standing in a room full of sleeping doppelgangers while he downloaded all the information from Kagerosa's computers. I should have had that bookmarked. Civil uprising, cover-up operations for both public safety and public decency. Kisuke, I doubt the whole of the Gotii will lose their clothes for any reason. Ah, here we go. Betrayals. Already did that, in the process of that, in case of clones, see page 742. He shrugged and turned to the page in question. Clone War, let happen if first time with assurance that others would know the difference between original and fake. If second, kill them ASAP, nothing more can be learned. He looked over the bodies. Is this the first or second time? Did the Zanpakuto rebellion count as a clone uprising? Might have something worth learning, he said, leaving the Reigai to live as he proceeded to connect to his underground lab and give Inaba a painful reveal. Chapter 85, The Reigai Assault. Squad 15 Barracks. With the reveal of the other Shinigami captains and lieutenants from the Garganta, accompanied by one of the Arrancar of Ichigo's court in Hueco Mundo, Yuryu immediately went on the offensive. He used Hirenkyaku to get behind the fakes and activated his Volstang, firing his feathers to the legs of his opponents. The moment they made contact, however, they all popped like balloons, leaving Yuria confused. Suddenly, the fake Rinji appeared behind Yuria with his Zabimaru in Shurkai and ready to tear into the Quincy's back. Thanks to his wings, Yuria deflected the attack and Rinji immediately attacked his double. Oh no you don't, he roared, swinging his own Zabimaru, only to be stopped by the fake Shinji. That same fake was then sucker punched by Kensei and kicked in the neck by a masked Mashiro, followed by a sickening crack as his neck was shattered. The features dissolved into that of a blank mannequin before turning into dust, leaving only a small red soul candy. Try to leave at least one alive, Urahara called out as clouds of gray ash collided and Yuryu was being chased by a cloud of pink. Kisuke looked to Nozomi, who disappeared. Damn it, he cursed, pulling out a tracker he had prepared during their time in Hueco Mundo. Sailaporo may have died but his main lab was still functional, Kisuke just needed some time. He watched his scanner as it picked up all the clone versions of the Shinigami. The Byakuyas were fighting each other, Kisuke knew something about their pride being involved. The fake Hinamori and Ranjaku were already neutralized in the massive hands of the Tracebestia's Chimeric Ion. The Renjis were fighting, both going into Bankai. The one seemed to have a vastly different one than what he saw of the 6th Lieutenant's release. The Vizards had on their masks and made pretty short work of their remaining copies, destroying the fake Kensei and immobilizing the fake Mashiro. For some reason, neither had donned their hollow masks, which Urahara found quite suspicious. Lastly, he saw Yuryu and the fake Toshiro were fighting. The latter was in Bankai to try and match the Quincy Volstang. The ice not lasting long against the vibrating Racier feathers, Yuryu commanded. Looks like your double ran off with Nozomi, Ishin said, trusting his comrades to win against their fakes. I've got Lisa, Chad, and Tatsuki guarding Jackie and Jericho. So long as he's asleep, no Senkaman should open. The shark Arrancar was with them as Urahara kept scanning. Let's hope that applies to a naturally occurring opening to the precipice world, he said as he finally found 2 signatures that were trying to get away from their location. That way, he called out, moving as fast as he could with Ishin and Halibel following close behind. It took them a minute, but they found Nozomi, bound and gagged with Kido, in front of a shrine in the middle of the woods. Though they saw the girl, Urahara found the signal coming from deeper inside the woods. Follow that signal, Kisuke ordered as he passed the tracker to Halibel, who went on ahead as he and Ishin landed in front of the girl. Urahara took out his Beneheim and shot at her with a Racier wave, causing her to pop like a balloon. I'm starting to get annoyed by this. You do know who you're fighting, right?
He heard his own voice say before dodging a blade swing aimed at his back. What were you? Ishin gave the fake no time to talk before punching it, only to get another balloon pop. Why did you make those portable jigai?
Ishin roared, getting just as annoyed.
Half a dozen Kisuk copies appeared, the two Soul Reapers going back to cover blind spots and to stay near the original Kisuk. The air was filled with pop after pop as the two fought off the fakes, soon getting caught in the middle of a tornado of blue light that destroyed the rest. When it dissipated, the captains looked up to see Halibel and Yuria with Nozomi in hand. Surprisingly enough, Kisuk, your double was not nearly as cautious as you,
Yuria said, dropping down to the two.
Everyone else was finishing up by the time I finished my fight with the fake Toshiro.
Urahara's double set a series of Kido traps around Nozomi, but he never expected me.
And you said helping Ichigo in his early prank wars with me was going to be a useless experience, Urahara said with a smile, making Ishin laugh at the memories. Yuria had his eye twitch in annoyance, but he had to concede the fact that it let him get the drop on the fake Kisuk.
Anyway, let's get back to my shop. I've got a lot to tell you, he said as they moved to return to the base, Nozomi still tied up. You mean MY Squad's barracks, Kisuk?
Ishin teased. It's still my shop, Ishin. The former shopkeeper returned.
Is this normal? Halibel asked Yurio, who could only groan. My condolences. Squad 1 Barracks, Yamamoto's office.
Kagarosa Inaba plans to usurp the Gotiei and replace them with Regai copies with mod souls based on the erasure of the current captains and lieutenants, Mayuri explained to the captain commander. He had a secret lab located hidden within the Senkaman Gate where he conducted his alterations to the Precipice world and the creation of his Regai.
More than that is his fixation with one Nozomi Kujo.
According to the data I was able to look through while downloading all of his research and findings, she seemed to be the first mod soul. The odd thing is that it seems he also plans to fuse with Nozomi.
Do you have any theories as to why that is? Yamamoto asked, clenching his fists as yet another past problem reared its head. And any way to tell the real Shinigami from the Regai copies?
I might have an idea, but I'd need to analyze erasure from both Kagarosa and Nozomi to fully test it,
Mayuri responded.
Plus, there is some good news in regards to the Regai.
But that would depend on your point of view.
Kagarosa seems to have an inability to control hollow erasure, so the copies of the Vizards would be without their masks and rendering them far weaker than otherwise. He reached into his Shihakusho and pulled out Ichigo's stasis pod, placing it before Genryusai. Either he thinks Ichigo would be the key to solving that problem or he deemed him to be that much of a threat. It was enough for him to brave going into my personal lab.
And considering that Ishido has yet to report his capture, we can assume that Kagarosa's gone into hiding.
And likely plans to unleash the full power of the Regai. Then I shall keep my students safe for the time being, Yamamoto said, taking Ichigo's pod and hiding him away. What would you say is the current threat level?
Mayuri took the moment to do some quick calculations before coming to his conclusion.
Each Regai, while restrained, should equal the original in strength and ability. Without those restraints, I'd say that there would be a 25% increase to their abilities.
Minimum,
he answered, earning a tired sigh from the old man. Just the ones he did right, some are thankfully flawed with inaccurate data. That did relieve Genryusai to some degree. Just one more thing, Captain Commander. Depending on the results of this attack, Urahara recommends the revival of Project Spearhead.
Explain. Yamamoto growled, not eager to consider bringing back the project but willing to listen to reason.
The original project was shut down due to morality issues, as the Central 46 would tell us, Mayuri started. Fear of the project going out of control is more likely. But, as evidenced by this and one other case, some of the mod souls survived the destruction of the project.
That one other case was a mod soul that found its way to Urahara and then to the Kurosaki household.
That soul was devoted to the family and served as Ichigo's soul after he became a soul reaper. Unfortunately, when the twins were kidnapped by Aizen, the mod soul fought, lost, was broken, and died saving its masters. There was an angry pulse from the stasis pod, as if Ichigo heard the conversation and was less than pleased with calling Kanan it. The idea for the project revival is to help increase our numbers again.
Or at least to free up some Shinigami from other tasks and increase efficiency. Yamamoto drummed his fingers against the table, mulling the idea over in his head and whether the risks outweighed the possible benefits. We end this attack first, and then I will decide. The dragon finally stated. Kagarosa's base? Damn that Mayuri. Kagarosa growled before getting into another coughing fit.
The nerve gas was already causing various muscle failure throughout his body and affecting his nervous system as well. He had to repeatedly use his Raiku's spatial displacement ability to get him to his base as fast as possible before he was rendered completely paralyzed and then die. If he had to assume, he already lost his Reigai of Lieutenants Nanao, Kira, Kuratsuchi, and his Nemia copy to the nerve gas that the original used in his main lab. That, on top of the lack of reports back from his Reigai in the world of the living, means he lost them as well. To finish his failed plans of the day, Ichigo Kurosaki was still out of his grasp, and who knows when he might awaken from his sleep.
Master Kagarosa.
The other Hinamori Reigai he had called out as she rushed to his side.
Are you all right, sir? You're looking terribly weak, she said, not noticing that Kagarosa tensed up in anger.
Weak, looking weak, nothing truly filled him with more rage and hate than being called weak.
Wait here, I'll get Unohana and Isane,
she said, getting ready to retrieve the Reigai healers. The moment she turned her back, Kagarosa cleaved her across her back and ran her through with Raikou.
The Reigai Hinamori turned to dust and left just her mod soul behind.
With that, Kagarosa collapsed, losing the use of his body more and more. He desperately reached out for the small pill, struggling to grasp it and bring it to his mouth. Even swallowing the small ball was a challenge, but it was one that was rewarded. Rage erupted from his being like fire until a second him separated from his body, and freeing him from the toxic nerve gas.
Nice try, Mayuri Kuratsuchi,
Kagarosa said, chuckling as he rose to his feet and ignoring the gasping pleas of the sacrificed mod soul.
But I won't be beaten that easily. He looked to his Raikou, grinning madly as he decided his next action. And my Reigai will crush the Godei. Squad 15 barracks. And that should just about do it,
Kisuke said, finishing the last steps to connect the barracks communique to a secure line with Squad 12's and, more importantly, with Mayuri. Said lieutenant's face appeared on the monitor as he finished preparations on his end.
How's things on your end? He asked as Nozomi watched, left sitting in the corner as the two scientists did their work. Kagarosa has been exposed and will likely unleash the full power of his Reigai copies of the captains and lieutenants.
So if you thought that the bracelets the copies wore would be a good indicator of who is real or not, we are out of luck there,
Mayuri reported back.
On the plus side, the new nerve agent seemed to be effective and my security cameras got us some details of his abilities.
As for his plans, he has this fixation on Nozomi Kujo. The girl in question tensed slightly at hearing this.
And though this is only a guess, I believe he intends to fuse with the girl.
That seems odd, Kisuke returned, doesn't seem to have much point to it either.
The very beginning of mod soul creation is basing it off of an existing soul reaper.
And if Nozomi is the first, then shouldn't she be based off the first volunteer? Oko Yashima, the head of the project, was the first volunteer. Mayuri answered, remembering that most of this happened after Kisuke's exile. And I wasn't the only one based off of him, Nozomi finally said, speaking up after deciding that she had little other option than to help out. Kagarosa Inaba was the other. The two of us were made from the two halves of Yashima's personality. You could say that I'm the light to Inaba's darkness. I figured, Mayuri said, happy that his theory was correct. If I had to guess, Nozomi might have something to her that Kagarosa needs in order to complete himself or another project that Yashima made before his full mental breakdown. Nozomi turned away, not happy with being reminded of the worst memories of the original's life.
On other matters, the Captain Commander is now considering the revival of Spearhead. This shocked the mod soul. He wants to end this fight with our copies before deciding though, correct? Urahara asked, Nozomi turning back to the screen.
Indeed, and Kagarosa will have to either be imprisoned or destroyed. Mayuri answered.
I have an idea, but they rely on Nozomi's cooperation. The two turned to the girl, now slightly unsettled with how Mayuri was smiling at her.
Spreading the word, living world.
So, to clarify, Halibel started, someone else with a grudge against Soul Society has made a clone army of a majority of the top Shinigami and is using them to overthrow and conquer the Soul Society. All the while, trying to capture this girl and fuse with her to revive the original mind behind the creation of Mod Souls.
The assembled captains nodded.
And I thought Aizen had the complicated plan. Apache said, somewhere between irritated and amused with the course of events.
I'm surprised you actually understood that.
Mila snarked to her sister fraction member, sparking another fight between them.
How uncouth.
Sunsung said, getting involved in the argument.
You say that he seems adverse to hollow erasure, correct?
The shark asked, earning a nod from Toshiro and Kensei while the other captains watched the fight in amusement.
Then the course is clear. Apache, Mila, Sunsung. You three return to Las Noches and bring us back up. Take Nozomi Kujo with you, she's the key to the enemy's plans, she ordered, ending the fight instantly as the three wordlessly obeyed and opened a garganta.
I shall go with them to the Soul Society. But know this, Soul Reapers, my king's safety is my top priority. She said, earning an understanding nod from the assembled captains and lieutenants.
Lisa, you're in charge.
Ishin said as he rose to his feet.
Yuria, you're coming with us.
Everyone else, protect the world of the living.
Here's the code to know it's us. July 17th.
The squad members nodded as Halibel opened her own garganta and the group progressed to the Soul Society.
Soul Society. This is Captain Commander Genryusai Shigokuni Yamamoto. The dragon announced over a system of hell butterflies, sending his message throughout the entire Siriitii and to the 75th Rukon districts in Shinigami Police Territory.
Extremely dangerous and powerful enemies have appeared and infiltrated the Gotii, aiming to replace our top officials. Until further notice, all but third seats to captains are ordered to stay inside their homes or squad barracks.
This curfew will end when we can confirm that the enemies of the peace are defeated.
The result was as he expected. All around him were the sounds of outrage and panic, coming from the Shinigami and the citizen souls. Some immediately complied with his orders, but many had to be forced.
Maybe he had to push it just a little bit more.
I am giving Kenpachi Zaraki permission to show no mercy, and I will be participating in the coming fights as well.
The public outrage turned to fear as everyone scrambled to get to safety. That might have been going a little overboard, head captain.
A black cat thought as she made her way throughout the different barracks of the Gotii squads.
From her findings, Ikaku and Yumachika were replaced, Isane was replaced, Kairaku and Yukitake were replaced by their fakes, even her precious bee was captured by the Reigai.
She was going to have a word with her protege about keeping her guard up at all times if she was captured by these fakes.
Even Kasuk prepared for his own self being an enemy. Kagarosa's base? So, war is it?
He heard the announcements the captain commander made, and all he could do was laugh.
If you want a war with my Reigai Yamamoto, you shall have it.
He roared as his remaining Reigai in the base assembled around him. He spun his Raikou around before holding it high, letting his energy pass through the blade in a wave of yellow light. All around him, his Reigai glowed with a pale light that burned like fire to show an increase in their own erasure.
This resonated with many other Reigai around the Siriitii that made sure they were in places of secret, unseen by their enemy. I have all I need. I do not fear anyone.
Ichigo's inner world.
Did you feel that?
The hybrid asked, sitting in the middle of a lake with the horizontal skyscrapers standing high above him.
The water itself was greatly disturbed, rippling madly and prompting Kyoka Suigetsu to crack him on the head.
What's going on out there is not important, Ichigo. The spirit scolded as Ichigo groaned in anger before settling back into his meditation. Instantly the waters began to calm, becoming perfectly still and mirror-like.
Now, let's begin again.
Images formed in the water, memories from Ichigo's life. All of his struggles and trials, each one changing more and more into losses and nightmares. The purpose of this was for Ichigo to gain full calm and serenity in his mind, as a calm and focused mind was the key principle to mastering Kyoka Suigetsu. He was making progress, but it was slow going, and Zangetsu was occupied with cleansing and repairing his soul from hell's influence. Chances were, he wasn't going to be able to help. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Getting to Las Noches. A black tear in space appeared in the vast deserts of Hueco Mundo, spitting out a group of Captain and Lieutenant Soul Reapers onto the fine desert sand. The group fell in a confused heap that slowly fumbled to get up, brushing the sand off their clothes as they did so.
That was rough, Kisuke said, scanning the area for a certain castle.
I forgot how little practice you guys have with Garganta.
Frankly, I'm not sure why I risked that.
Kensei and several others looked ready to beat the scientist to death. Byakuya was as calm and dignified as ever. Mashiro was going on about a beach party.
Now come on, let's find Las Noches. Is that why we came to Hueco Mundo?
Shinji asked, deciding to try to calm down before attempting to kill Kisuke.
What's in Las Noches? Well, unless Yuria completely destroyed it, there should still be some material from Aizen's Arrancar scientist's lab. Maybe find Aizen's own workspace there.
There. Byakuya suddenly spoke up, pointing in the distance to what was a small building in the distance. Almost completely unnoticeable at this distance. Maybe I should build that lighthouse Ichigo wanted. Kisuke muttered before doing some quick math in his head, then collapsing with exhaustion.
And a massive desert transit system.
He nearly cried after figuring out just how far from Las Noches they were.
Arrancar raffle. Okay, gather up everyone, Jin said, summoning the Arrancar. Kisuke and his group arrived 3 hours after wandering the desert before getting taken to the prisons by Runaganga.
It took another 2 for Jin to notice and actually do something about it.
Since we don't have 10 top Arrancar, you can't exactly go by Espada. Knights are up for consideration, but you are not to go by Cabarellos.
Despite being Spanish for night, people might mistake you for the Disney bird trio. Next on the agenda, Ichigo is out of commission and Soul Society might be under attack by copies of the top Shinigami combatants.
Volunteers?
He asked as all 8 hands shot up. Some eager to prove themselves to their king in his absence, others just to fight.
Okay, I'm only going to allow 1, so I'm going to pull a name out of a hat. The Silver Fox said, holding up Kisuke's hat. Why did it have to be my hat?
Kisuke groaned, ignoring that he was literally the only one that had a hat.
Renji's new Bankai. Zabimaru.
Renji stood across his Zanpakuto spirit, the fur-covered women and the albino snake kid chained to her, anger and betrayal in his eyes.
What was that true Bankai thing? I thought I earned your Bankai a while ago,
he said, earning a scoff from the pair.
Not exactly. We've been keeping it from you because honestly? What have you actually done to deserve it?
The baboon woman asked.
The furthest you've gone was finally manning up and fighting for your beliefs. If Zangetsu didn't convince us, you still wouldn't have the Suzabimara form.
The snake admitted, shivering as he remembered the talk Zangetsu had with him.
So what changed?
The Soul Reaper asked.
No way in hell is a crappy knockoff copy going to beat us.
The 2 responded.
I don't remember having that kind of ego.
That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers to Save His Mother.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.